across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and a very happy Monday morning to you from me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, at Talk, the home of common sense. The reason I'm happy is sun is shining, it's a lovely day, and I'm not at a Labour Party conference. No problem with going to Liverpool. Absolutely stunning, beautiful city, wonderful people. Always felt very at home there, but not a Labour Party conference. I feel that way about all party conferences, as I've made clear to you many a time over the years. But delighted to say we will be talking a lot about Labour Party conference because, oh my goodness, it's not going very well so far, is it? I know. We're all surprised by that, but so much to talk about. And if you want to listen on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watch on YouTube, your connected device, either way, you're very welcome. But if you do miss anything of the show, you can always go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, it will not surprise you, we'll be leading with Nigel Farage accusing Keir Starmer of insulting millions of voters worried about Britain's borders, as, by the way, the vast majority of the country is, as the Prime Minister branded reforms immigration plans racist and immoral. The PM on Sunday called out the Reform Q leaders' plan to tear up rules regarding indefinite leave to remain, including people who've already got it, saying it needs to be called out for what it is. Oh, so stunning and brave, Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Labour Party conference today in Liverpool, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood will declare that migrants' rights to settle in Britain will be dependent on them not claiming benefits, and they must show they contribute to society. It won't be backdated. But otherwise, it's pretty much exactly the same policy as reforms, except, of course, it's Labour's, so it's not racist and immoral. Are you keeping up at the back? Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, speaking during the time we're on air, is set to announce that young people out of work for 18 months will lose their benefits. Except, of course, they won't unless they've got a good reason for not taking a job. And they will always have a good reason because they feel a little bit stressed or anxious on a Monday morning. In her speech to conference, she's going to promise that all people aged 18 to 21 will have education, training or work under the government's youth guarantee. I can guarantee to you right now that is never going to happen. If I was in charge, it absolutely would. And by the way, 18 months, way too long to leave them without any of those things. I'd say 3 months, absolute max, but we'll talk about that. Plus, a petition opposing the Starmer's plans for new digital ID brick cars has already reached 2.3 million signatures and counting every minute. The PM announced his plan on Friday to introduce a digital app for all adults by the end of this Parliament. We'll be talking about why a digital ID is so much more and more dangerous for our freedoms than a passport or driving licence. Honestly, the people who are saying, oh, you've already downloaded your information for Facebook, or you've already got a passport, you really haven't been paying attention for the last few years, but we'll explain to you why you really should. So all that coming up, plenty more besides. You know what I want to hear from you on today. You're obviously welcome to make your calls on anything you want to get in touch, but got to talk about Keir Starmer branding reforms migration policy racist and immoral. And on the very next day, the Labour Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announces a really similar plan for migrants seeking settled status. It just isn't going to be backdated, but why does backdating it to people who are already here, the waves, the Boris waves and others, why does that make it racist and immoral, but doing it from now isn't? And by the way, who the hell mentioned race? Oh, Prime Minister, it was you, because you're obsessed with it, as the left is. No one else was talking about race, wasn't even remotely mentioned. But you thought it was all about the colour of someone's skin, because that's all you think about. Well, we'll talk about all of that. I want to hear your reaction. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Calls to charge at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. You can get in touch on X at talkTV as well. Get in touch. We'll get your messages and your calls on air. Delighted to say, already definitely on air, commentator Sam Armstrong, who joins us as always on a Monday morning. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Another quiet Monday morning, and you make this point every Monday, and you're right. Every single Monday, off you go.
Every single Monday, we walk into the talkTV towers and we are greeted with yet another nonsense press release from the Home Office telling us this time, Julia.
Yes.
No, wait, this time. Finally solved illegal migration. Spoiler, they haven't. I don't think we're even going to insult our audience by spending that much time talking about.
That's the Prime Minister's job. He's the one who insults our audience. You're all racists. Just in case you didn't get the memo, you're all racists.
Can I just say, right, just for the ones that are too slow, you are not racist if you are concerned about people breaking into this country illegally, who are raping our women, stealing our jobs and changing our culture, all of which is happening en masse every single
125 in one boat at the weekend.
They have literally invented another type of boats. They're calling it the mega dinghy, and 120 people are coming over. At the lowest estimate, each one of those people costs us £500,000. So that boat...
Bargain.
Cost us £60 million. When I say us, I mean anyone who pays taxes.
Lifetime, so the asylum hotel,
the drain on the taxpayer over their lifetime,
the £300 round trip
is
taxis,
going to cost at a minimum, and that is a gross underestimate, £500,000 per head. We had 1,000 people arriving. That is this weekend. £500 million out the door.
That's illegal migrants. But the policies that Shabana Mahmood and indeed Nigel Farage announced the other week, to much fanfare, and I have to say fully in agreement with every single word of it, was about legal migrants, people given visas. And we had the news on Friday, didn't we? The sort of mid-23 to mid-24. So before Labour were in charge, 755,000 people added to the British population, almost entirely, 98% of it was net migration. It was people immigration, people coming to the country. The year before that, it was 890,000 more people in the country, almost entirely down to immigration. People aren't having enough babies. In fact, more people are dying than having babies on average. Very few people leaving the country. That's the Boris wave. People say that, OK, it's okay to be bothered about illegal migration, but apparently until today, and the Home Secretary is going to make this announcement, we weren't allowed to be bothered about all the people who've come, not just coming here legally this week, but coming here legally for the last 20 years, who we were told were an economic benefit. Basically, virtually every single one of them was a high earner and working in the NHS, apparently. And now we're told, actually, no, from now on, you have to prove you're a good citizen, pay taxes, national insurance, be work, no benefits, clean, criminal record and all of that. Otherwise, you won't be able to get settled status and you'll be deported. What is the difference from that and what was announced by Nigel Farage a couple of weeks ago, which was that, but backdated? And if you've come here and you've been awarded settled status, you're going to have to reapply. And if you don't meet these tests, you're gone. I mean, why is one of those policies right and good? And why is one of those policies racist and immoral?
Let's just take what Keir Starmer says is racist. What Nigel Farage's proposal was that if you had come into the UK on a temporary visa and somebody had said you can come to the UK for 3 years, you can work here, stay as a care worker. You could also bring your entire family. And we know that Zimbabweans, for example, were bringing 10 members of their family for one person working.
I don't think I like 10 members of my family. Sorry.
In a care home. He says that if you think that, having had a look at that you don't want to let that person stay here, which they haven't been offered yet, forever, for as long as they and their family would like, no matter if they are contributing to our economy, no matter if they're committing crimes, no matter if they are making any sort of beneficial offering to their local area, Keir Starmer says if you believe that you think maybe at the end of that 3 years we can have a review and decide if you should stay or you should go, you are a racist. That is not racism. That is basic common sense.
Sanity.
It is a disgrace that we are not reviewing people at the end of it. If you go into a job, you go in and you might do 6 months, you might do a year, you might do 3 months, but you go through a probationary period. Why is it?
Oh, Labour want to get rid of that as well, by the way.
Why is it acceptable that when I go and start a new job, it's on the basis, come in, we'll have a look, we'll see if it's working. If it doesn't work out...
I've seen a lot of people who are great in an interview and then they can't quite keep it up for 3 or 6 months, and then you go, this person is actually a slacker.
And of course, as you say, Julia, Keir Starmer says all of these people coming here are contributing. So why is it a problem if Nigel Farage says at the end of it, we're just going to check at the end of your 3 years
that's the
if
thing.
you're still making a contribution to this country?
If they're all such a benefit, then it won't be a problem, will it? I mean, this is the thing. And also, again, like this idea that, OK, and if you are a foreigner, you never get to have benefits in this country. That's just not... You're not. You're not. If you're a British citizen, you get them. If otherwise, but again, the left freaking out. Just think, yeah, but hold on, but you told us these people weren't on benefits. You pick a side. We're in the same thing, aren't we? Look, I mean, it's obviously madness. Keir Starmer's also, he's been putting out some fascinating tweets. I have a funny feeling he's not writing them himself. He's not that pithy. He said at the weekend, it's national division or it's national renewal. That's the fight we face. What does that even mean?
Let me tell you what it means. It's just another way for that man to signal to the people he's got up in Liverpool who are behind him, the progressive left, that he is secretly, despite the fact he's paying lip service to the rest of us, he is secretly going to maintain the decades that we have had of mass migration. This is a man that doesn't care about the massive deterioration of working class jobs in this country. This is a man that doesn't care about the crime in our streets. This is a man that doesn't care about the mess. This is a man that doesn't care about hotels. He doesn't care about a bit of it. He is attempting to talk out of both sides of his mouth, to say to us, oh, look, I promise you, we are dealing with it, while he's saying to his own side, look, they're racists, I'm with you, but trust me, I have to talk like I'm one of them.
It's a wink,
liar.
It's interesting, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has already said, look, a lot of people in the hall aren't going to like what she has to say. But these are policies they would be booing if this is what Nigel Farage announced, whereas in fact these have got massive support even from Labour voters. I mean, the thing is, I suppose, someone who 20 years ago could spend 20k on a donkey field for his mum. Okay, yes, she was disabled, she was elderly. It was actually a beautiful, loving thing for a son to do, but it does look very questionable in terms of him being able to perfectly legally dodge inheritance tax on it. Either you own it or she owns it. Which is it? We're in Angela Rayner trust for her son territory. There's always a good reason behind it, but at the end of the day, you can't go around telling everybody else that they need to pay their tax and they shouldn't be dodging perfectly legally any tax, but then doing it yourself because it makes you a hypocrite, which we already knew he was. What do you make of his comments about VAT? Because interviewed on the B by Laura Kunsberg yesterday, it genuinely was hilarious how many people, Labour supporters, were saying, oh, he was so good. He was so bad. I mean, he was just like trying to talk through the time, just like literally, if I keep talking, you can't ask me many more questions. I mean, quite apart from the fact that she did, all credit to her, she pushed him on ID cards, which we'll come to, but also on the VAT. Is he going to, would he or would he not refuse to raise VAT? 7 times he failed to say categorically, we will not be raising VAT. He kept saying, oh, those were our pledges, we stick by our pledges. And now today, Rachel Reeves has sort of seems to have been saying she won't do it. But again, that doesn't mean things haven't changed because they'll suddenly discover a new black hole. But would it be so wrong if Labour did, given the state of the economy, if they did raise a tax which goes on everything and actually which is a very progressive tax in the sense that, the stuff that people most rely on, things like, food and stuff, isn't subject to VAT, children's clothes and stuff, but the expensive stuff, the better off you are, the more stuff you buy that's expensive, you're paying more VAT. Given that we need to raise a hell of a lot more tax, because we ain't cutting any spending under this government, is that not one of the fairer taxes to raise?
Absolutely, categorically not. This is a rabble that came into office on the basis that Liz Truss wrecked the economy. You can trust us. Yeah. We know what we're doing. We've got an economist from the Bank of England to run to run our nation's finances. You can trust us. They have waltzed into office thinking that they could do it, thinking that it was easy, thinking that they had all the answers. The smuggest, most smarmy lot I've ever had the misfortune to witness. They have walked in and they have almost immediately tanked the economy yet further from the already low state that it was. We know it is basic that if you are spending hand over fist on migrants, on climate change, on welfare, that you are not going to be able to balance the books. Something has to give. And they promised. They looked down the barrel, looked them in the eye and said, we will not raise those taxes. If they can't get it done, if they can't balance the books, they should have and I haven't called for this until now, that they should have the respect to go back to the electorate and say, do you know what, we were elected on a false promise that we could not get this done.
Every government is elected on, I completely agree with you every single word, but every single government is elected on a false promise because every single government seems to get elected saying, even we've seen those polls showing that Reform would win a majority on current polling in the next election. election, be able to have the mandate to do what they want to do. But there's still a whole, yes, they'll save money from net zero, they'll save money from various things they're going to do, but and all credit to them on that. But at the end of the day, voters do insist on saying they want this much spent on the NHS, they want this benefit for that person, they want that for that, they want this, they want all this, they want all that, more police, more this, but we want to pay fewer taxes and lower taxes. We'll just get those 5 billionaires over there to pay it all. All politicians need to say, categorically, stand in a line and say, guys, the numbers don't add up. Full stop. We've been lying to you. You've been playing along with it. You know it's not true. It's not how finances work. And if you want this, this or this, you're going to have to pay more taxes for it. And yes, not just Mr. Rich billionaire over there.
But I want some accountability from politicians that knowingly or recklessly lied to the public. And we used to have it, right? George H.W. Bush Sr., he said before he was elected in 1988, read my lips, no new taxes. He put taxes up. What did the American people do with him? They booted him out.
Yeah.
And I want exactly the same thing to happen to these people. They knew what the sums were. There wasn't a black hole.
They didn't, yeah.
They walked in there. The first thing they did was they gave a massive pay rise to train drivers. All their old union mates are raking it in. This lot are just economically illiterate, and we are being forced to pay the price for it. They made a promise. If they can't keep to their promises, they need to go. Call an election, Starmer.
Well, yeah, 100% on that. What do you make of what we're going to hear from Rachel Reeves today? Young people who turn down a job after 18 months on benefits face being stripped of their state handouts. They won't. All people aged 18 to 21 who will have education, training or work. This is part of a youth guarantee. It echoes a plan that was floated by Rishi Sunak, focusing on the contribution. They're going to abolish, this is just laughable. They're going to abolish long-term youth unemployment. 1 in 8 young people currently NEETs, not in education, employment or training. The reality of this is a lot of these people aren't employable. Yep. They'll have to have a good reason not to work. Well, we know they won't. They'll all be on the sickness, because that's what they've been on the sick. That's what they've been doing. But also this idea you can't leave people long term. You're going to leave an 18-year-old without work, without any purpose in their life for 18 months. It should be 3 months. If you're going to do this, you've got 3 months. You can have your summer after school, then you've got to get a job. And if you can't get a job, we'll find you a job. And there is no access at all to any benefits. You have to be in work or training, full stop, end of, nothing to discuss. Now, I'm sorry, I think that might focus people's minds, including parents' minds, because an awful lot of parents, the feckless parents who brought up the feckless kids, and yes, if your kid is feckless, it's your fault. I don't know why people don't think this is part of your job as a parent, to turn out a hard-working young person. If you're not going to be getting their housing benefit to pay their rent for, they're not going to be able to afford to move out, they're going to be on your payroll. Make sure they can get a job. End of. It's very simple. This is basic 101 parenting.
Firstly, we are told day after day after day that the reason that we need to import half of the third world is because we haven't got people to do the jobs. Well, maybe if you stopped paying 18-year-olds to sit around playing Xbox and drinking cider, then we might be able to do again. We used to have plenty of people to do all the jobs we needed. There's no reason we don't now. Second thing, I cannot think of something worse for an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old than to sit around all day without a purpose, without a job. Thirdly, it is absolutely categorically a family's responsibility. If you have a child between 18 and 21 who is long-term unemployed, that is doing exactly that, sitting around claiming they're depressed, playing Xbox, shame on you. Shame on you. It is your job to get them out, to get there. It'll be better for them. It'll be better for the country. And Labour
but make them the parents' problem in that sense. It's like, fine, when if you want to pay for them, that's fine. But we're not paying for them. End of. I do want to get to it. Small matter, just a small matter of us losing any control over our lives, being basically constantly monitored at all times, and the government being able to, at the drop of a hat, stop you from, for instance, being able to buy food, access healthcare, do anything you want to do. How? Well, if you have a digital ID card. No, it's not a little card. No, it's not like your driving licence or your passport or a credit card you've already got. It's going to be a government app on your phone, probably, and unlike, your NHS app, which has just got that information about you and is only updated when information is necessary to update, we're talking about a constantly updating record of where you are, what you do, where you go, where you spend, all your vaccinations, all of that. This is what the government's going to bring in. brilliantly, 2.3 million people and counting every minute have already signed a petition saying no to digital ID cards. This is something that Tony Blair has pushed as a solution to every problem. I mean, Tony Blair stubs his toe, he gets out of bed and he thinks, if only we had digital ID cards, this wouldn't have happened. Keir Starmer has laughably, I mean, even the BBC is laughing at this, claimed that we can sort out illegal migration because they come here to work illegally. They denied that for years, by the way. Then it's been exposed on the front page of the Sun and the Mail. Then it's true. We're going to sort that out by having digital ID cards, because those employers who currently get people to work for half the minimum wage or less with no rights, just when they get off the boat and come out of their asylum hotel and cash in hand, they miraculously are now going to, having never asked for a national insurance number or a passport or proof of visa to work, and now miraculously going to be asking for your digital ID. I mean, unbelievable that once again, to stop criminality, and by the way, we know where these people are, you can find them easily. I could take my local police or my local Home Office officials to all the areas around mine and all the shops that I think they're illegal workers. I bet I'll be right 90% of the time. They apparently can't find them. But the the 70 million people in this country, the majority of us law-abiding people, we're going to be required to be constantly monitored and tracked, and possibly in future limited by our government what we can do in terms of our freedoms, to deal with some blokes getting off a dinghy that the government won't deal with. This is insane. We have to give up our civil rights, our civil liberties, our freedoms that we have enjoyed in this country for 1,000 years. We have never been a papers, please society. There has never been a file kept on each and every one of you in some repository where little government officials can make a back mark against you. But we are going to have to give up that fundamental right, something about being English, in order to deal with migration, maybe. Nonsense.
But let me tell you, Julia, I have been in politics for a long time, and I know that when politicians suddenly make massive, big, controversial announcements like this, when they are going through a massive political turmoil of their own, that what they are trying to do is distract you from their problem and their own failings. But in a sense, I don't care if they're trying to solve migration through this route, or if they're trying to distract from their own problems. You stay away from my freedoms, because I'm telling you now, I'm not having it on my phone, I'm not using it, I'm not showing it, and I think they're going to have a real hard time trying to convince the people in this country to comply with this rubbish.
If people have learnt nothing from the COVID period, they learnt nothing from the truckers in Canada, from what's going on in China, where you literally, if you're caught saying something wrong about the government, you can have your social credit limited so that you're not allowed to buy a train ticket. And we were talking about massive curtailment of freedom. And this is what the people who are behind this, the Larry Ellisons, the people at Tony Blair, this is what they talk about at their World Economic Forum. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's all about making money. But they think we need to be controlled. We need to be made to do the right thing. Well, no, or we could just stop the boats in the first place, and we could make sure that all employers who don't ask for official ID and proof of employment are fined till their eyeballs bleed. You get £100,000 fine, maybe even a prison term, if you employ an illegal worker. Do you think they'd still do it? Because I've got a funny feeling that they wouldn't. They need to know that it's going to happen. They need to know they're going to be caught, and they won't do it. You can solve it that way. But no, you're going to curtail our freedoms. All I know is that every single person I know has already said, I'd sooner go to prison than carry one of those cards. Ain't gonna happen. But let's not be distracted about why they're doing it. Again, as you say, this is about look over here, look over here. So much to talk about. Loads of calls on the board. Can't wait to get to them. 0344 499 1000. We'll get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
What you're asking me to do is comment on an arrest. Now, that's an active legal case.
No, it's not. No, it's not, because they haven't charged him.
I used to teach law for journalists, and I know that you don't say anything about active legal cases.
It's not an active legal case because he hasn't been charged. He's been arrested but not charged. Christine, he has been arrested but not charged. There are no active legal proceedings.
In Scotland, when you're arrested, it becomes an active case.
Okay, I'm in London. Okay, Christine.
We've got a ring across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:28 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong's here as well. And you're on the phone, so 344 499 1000. We're talking about, first up, Keir Starmer saying that the reforms policy on migration, particularly dealing with settled status, is racist and immoral. And then the announcement today from the Home Secretary is going to be pretty much the same policy, just not backdated. Mark's on the line, is in Richmond. Mark, what do you want to say about all of that?
Hi there.
Hello.
How you doing? The first thing is that the law is to create certainty. And I don't think I've ever come across a Prime Minister who's created so much uncertainty about the law in the short duration that he's been in office. The other thing is that he's not a very good lawyer.
Really? How did he become Director of Public Prosecutions?
I have no idea. I mean, racism is a subset of discrimination. Discrimination in the legal definition is you take a group and you make a division in that group with no real logical basis of making that division. There is nothing in reforms policy that does that.
No, but also nothing in reforms policy mentioned race. It's got sod all to do with whether someone is black, brown, yellow, white or anything else.
And your lawyers are usually very careful with their words. But this guy's just shitting from the hip as far as I'm concerned. And so I just sit there going, he wants to lead the country. He's going on about the law. He's prosecuting people. Everyone's saying two-tier care. And he's an awful lawyer. It's as simple as that. He's just an awful lawyer.
But do you think also it's just these cheap sort of attacks? Oh, no, I'm not calling reform voters racist, because a lot of them were voted Labour at the last election or in previous elections, and they might want to win them back in a lot of those key red wall seats. But this is the thing. Have they not worked out yet? And the same has happened in France and in Germany and Italy and all these other countries and in America with Donald Trump, that going around telling everyone that your opponent is racist when there's no evidence that they actually are racist. I mean, there are some parties in Europe that absolutely are blatantly, openly racist, but there's nothing. I'm telling you, I've known Nigel Farage. I've had enough long lunches with him. If he was racist, if accidentally said something racist, I've literally never heard him say anything, even an inkling of anything that could be considered racist. He isn't, full stop. But have they not learned that just calling everybody who disagrees with you racist is not a winning policy?
It's a dog whistle policy. That's all it is. It's just to throw the dog whistle out, say the names, and just hope it sticks. That's all they're doing.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's working out so well for them. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Lee is also on the line. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Lee's in York. And Lee, you want to talk about the digital ID plan? Hello, are you there?
Yeah, hi, good morning, Julia. You okay? How are you?
Very well. I thought, were you just checking in with your digital IT to find out if you could talk? We can hear you just fine, my lovely.
Making sure it works. Making sure they're not hacking me already.
Oh, they already are, trust me.
I wanted to make 2 points, really.
Please go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Darling, assume we can hear you unless I tell you we can't. Make your points, come on.
Yeah. No problem. So my first point is, number one, obviously with the ID card, I regard myself as quite an educated person. I can't understand for the life of me what they do with illegal migrants in relation to a brick card. If they arrive here, are they going to get a brick card? So for them to be able to work, whether it's delivery or whether it's car washes or whether it's, whatever job or what industry they're in, will they be produced with an ID card? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. My second point is, if we've got our own Prime Minister throwing words around like racist to people like Nigel Farage, does not anyone learn anything from what happened to Charlie Kirk? It only takes one deranged, mentally unstable person to want to be a hero, to go to a press conference, to go to a public venue. And I really do feel for people like Nigel Farage who actually stand up in public. Someone could sneak into a press conference, try to be the hero and try and attempt to take his life, because we've got our own Prime Minister saying he's a racist. So you've got Charlie Kirk being accused of a racist, being a fascist, and unfortunately lost his life.
Yeah.
How can our own Prime Minister see the substance in using that word towards another member of Parliament?
Oh, absolutely. You're quite right. Although I think he's very careful to say the policies are, because I think he knows that I would really hope that Farage would sue him if he did say, "Are you racist?" because he would absolutely lose that libel. I think you're quite right on that. No, people haven't learned their lessons on that. And Nigel Farage has to have a heck of a lot of security even now. And people go, "Oh, isn't it funny someone threw a milkshake over him?" I mean, my God, what if that was something very, very different, like acid or something? On digital ID, that's the thing I can't quite work out. So, if you're a migrant, do you get your own version of digital ID to work? Otherwise, you just have paperwork and then you're not allowed to work, or you could just forge that paperwork. Let's face it, Lee, I think we all know they haven't thought it through. Thank you so much for your call. Appreciate that. Sam Armstrong, just quickly, I've read up on this. It's only the Brits that get. It's only people who are legally here and legally able to work and British who get this ID. So what? So how would that mean someone who could work here legally, do they get it or not? Have they said?
They have not said. I mean, of course,
it looks like there's a flaw.
Yeah, and one of the flaws is that the courts could come along in a couple of years' time and say, actually, it's breaching their human rights to not provide them with a card because you're banning them from working, and that's not fair. So now they get cards too.
10:34 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to go live to the Labour Party conference, where I'm not. Thank you. Paul Richards, a former Labour Special Advisor. We'll find out what he makes of it all. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get right now to Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Paul Richards is a former Labour Special Advisor who's joining us. A very, very good morning to you, Paul.
Hello, Julia. Hello. How are you?
Very well. I'm really well because I'm not at Labour Party conference. I am an equal opportunity hater of party conferences. It's all of them.
Well, we're missing you, obviously, and you're very welcome any time.
I often find I'm not getting a very friendly reception at Labour Party conference. I don't know why, though.
I can't believe that to be true, but anyway, we'll see. I mean, you can see me behind me. The delegates are going in to watch some of the speeches. I've just seen several cabinet ministers flowing past me, so you know, we're all here, and you're not, which is a shame.
Having a fabulous time. They probably would think I was racist because I'm really a big fan of Reform's migrant policy. The Prime Minister, though, says it's racist and immoral, the policy. But at the same time, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is going to be announcing their good citizen test for the government for a settled status. So it's almost, as far as I can tell, identical to Reform's policy. It's just not going to apply to people who've already got settled status. It's not going to be backdated. So why is one policy racist and immoral and the other isn't?
I was listening to your discussion on this earlier with the callers, and I think it's actually a mistake to just shout racist at people that you don't agree with. Far more effective, I would say, is to look at the actual policies that are being proposed by Reform UK and by the Labour government and work out which ones are more likely to be successful and work. And the fact is that the Reform UK policy crumbled under scrutiny within about an hour of it being announced.
Did it?
It was based on figures that didn't add up, that had been, well, the figures it was based on for savings were repudiated by the very think
these
tank
were
that had
estimates
produced
from
them. So
CPS based on OBR reports, but OBR have rejudged them. That doesn't mean it's
and everyone said
crumbled.
the numbers were wrong.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't care if it says 10 billion quid or 300 billion quid.
Within minutes.
The policy didn't crumble.
But
the exact no, Paul. The policy didn't crumble. It's not based on it'll only work if it's this exact saving. That's a nonsense.
No, because if you're pretending to be the Prime Minister, if you're claiming to be the next government, you can't launch your flagship. You can't launch your flagship policy based on numbers that simply don't add up. And
well,
a small child looking at the numbers could immediately tell you that they wouldn't add up, and the whole thing crumbled within about an hour.
It didn't.
So
it didn't.
I don't think it's about
but it did. No, it's just a nonsense.
I think it's saying, what about the substance?
The substance is
the policy was absolute nonsense.
You
so
don't.
This is their big announcement.
No, the substance is whether it's a 10 billion or 20 billion difference in saving long term. I don't think the British public even care. What they want is a policy. Whoever delivers it, which is why Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, Labour Party Home Secretary, is delivering. Well, promising to deliver, whether it actually happens, a similar policy, is that they don't think that anyone who, Tom, Dick or Harry, who turns up here should be allowed to stay if they're not a net contributor. Why is it racist if Reform do it, but it's not if Labour do it?
What's wrong with that? That sounds like a very positive idea to me. There's quite a buzz around that here at conference.
That's Reform's policy.
People are, except Reform. Well, lots of ideas flowing into the Labour government, but we are the government, and Reform have 5 MPs, and we have rather more than that.
They're also way ahead in the polls.
We are forming legislation. Well, polls are a snapshot, as you well know. Different parties lead at different points. That doesn't predict the election.
When was the Labour Party? When was the Labour Party last in front in the polls?
I've no idea.
Exactly.
Probably just before the election, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And which we went on to win with a massive majority.
Why is there a question mark over whether Keir Starmer is even going to make it to next year's party conference with Andy Burnham, the sort of the king over the water wandering around?
There's no question mark. Well, Andy Burnham arrived. He was met by a huge crowd of people egging him on to stand for the leader. But unfortunately, Julia, they're all journalists. They're the only people that are playing this up. And I think Mr. Burnham needs to do the excellent job he's doing in Manchester and carry on doing that. But the delegates here are united behind the Prime Minister.
No, they're not. The polling shows
Manchester.
very different.
No.
That Labour people are very much looking.
Here.
Polling repeatedly shows that Labour Party members and indeed a lot of Labour MPs are telling journalists that they want him gone. He's not up to the job.
Absolutely not. Andy Burnham has completely overshot on this. He's played his hand, and there's no mechanism for him to even become.
This is true.
I mean, he's not an MP. Let's forget. He's got the same chance as you of becoming Prime Minister right now, because as Mayor of Manchester doesn't give you a shoe-in to become Prime Minister.
At least he's a member of the party. That might be an extra shoe-in. But I mean, all I'm just saying is, there's a reason why he thinks there is a shot worth making, isn't there? I mean, we've got a Prime Minister who's not even quite 15 months into the job, and there's question marks about his future, and he's throwing out mad policies like ID cards. Can you explain to me, because he failed to explain to Laura Kunsberg yesterday in an interview, how me having a digital ID card on my phone that tracks me constantly and knows everything about me and is updated in real time and could perhaps prevent me getting a job or buying something if I haven't got my vaccines up to date in the event of a next pandemic. How does that put illegal migrants off from coming here?
That's quite a big leap of imagination, isn't it? Where's that come from? Vaccines? Where's that come from? That's a big leap of imagination. The announcement
literally
has been
what it
right
can
to
be
work
used
and your
for.
NI number.
No, that's not what it'll have on it.
Only in your dystopic view of the world.
Well, pretty much every ID system has been used.
I think the ID cards is a really interesting policy because it's good. It's a good policy. I think we should all have an ID on our phone. We've all got smartphones. Good idea. But also it's annoying all the right people. There was a crowd outside, campaigning against ID, and they were saying that 5G was giving you cancer, and they were saying that climate change was a hoax, and it's annoyed all the right people, this policy. And you look at its opponents, and then look at the people who actually support it. It is another tool.
So the good people support it. Paul,
but more importantly, it's just a sign of citizen.
2.3 million people have already signed a petition against this ID. This is not the same as
4 million people, Julia. 4 million voted for reform. 4 million people voted Reform UK, and not even all of them have signed the petition.
What's that got to do with anything?
A mass uprising, is it?
What's that? I think 2.3 million people in 3 days signing a petition
members oppose. No.
I'm pretty sure the Reform UK members can make up their own mind. There'll be plenty of Labour members. It's not a stretch of the imagination.
I'm merely pointing out that is not a lot in terms of a population of 60 plus million.
It's not a stretch of the imagination.
Support for it.
It's not a stretch of the imagination about what digital ID. I've got a driving licence, I've got an NHS app, I've got a passport, I've got a national insurance number. The government and any employer doesn't need any more information on me.
So why do you care?
Why do I care? Because I saw what happened during COVID.
Why you've got all of that on your phone already?
Paul, because it's not a...
It's just a very natural step.
Paul,
it's a very
no,
easy
it's not.
thing to do.
It's not
every citizen will have one.
Paul, it's not tracked in real time. And we've seen what's happened in China with social credits. We saw what happened in Canada. We saw what happened with vaccine passports here.
We are not China.
Well, no, we thought that before COVID, didn't we? We're not China. And then people were banned. And then Labour was calling for people to be banned from going to work if they didn't have a vaccine. But we're definitely nothing to worry about, Paul. Nothing to worry about. No.
It's nothing to do with vaccines. It's nothing to do with COVID. It's to do with the right to work and having all the data on a phone that we have in our pockets already, but in one single place. It's quite convenient. It's quite useful. You have to show ID when you pick up a vintage parcel, so why not?
It's really, it's not in real time. It's not constantly changing and updating, and it doesn't track. Very, very different. With all due respect, I don't think you understand what this ID app would actually mean. So here's the thing. How does that stop someone who wants to come on an illegal dinghy, and we had 125 on one mega dinghy alone at the weekend, how does that stop them from getting work? Are you convinced that the employers right now who happily take on someone who doesn't speak English, doesn't have a passport, doesn't have a national insurance number, paying them off the books a quarter or whatever of the minimum wage, that they're suddenly going to go, oh, but now I must ask for your digital ID? Really?
I think it's another tool in the kit that can help with that and cracking down on those rogue employers and exploitative bosses. I mean, it's another way to do it.
You can do that. You can crack down on them already.
People will try and get around it, as they do with every system and every regulation and every law. So it's not the magic bullet, but it is a very important step forward.
Tell me which employer.
The people that shout loudest about the small boats are now the same people complaining about digital ID.
No, because digital ID won't stop the small boat. Paul, do you think there are employers who don't ask for national insurance or passport or visa proof of work right now who will suddenly start doing it because of digital ID? How you deal with that is you prosecute very hard and very regularly employers. Why does it make it harder?
Well, it will make it harder because there is a single, simple way to check somebody's identity.
No, that doesn't make it harder.
The police and the other authorities crack down on those
you've either got a passport,
it's not the only way, but it's one of the ways.
No, you've either got a passport, national insurance number that can be checked, or you don't. It's a 5-minute job. I've got an 18-year-old who just got a job, doing bar work. She had to produce her passport and her national insurance number. There you go. Yeah. So there's nothing stopping employers doing that right now.
It'll be another way to crack down on those rogue employers. But it won't. And also it means everyone is a citizen, so we all have the same,
Everyone is a citizen. No, only
ID card.
No.
And you don't have to carry it. You won't have to show it to the police.
Everyone isn't a citizen.
It's not like sort of post-war movies with the Stasi on the streets. It's just simply a way of saying, yeah, I am a citizen. Here's my data for getting a job.
I can
it's
already
all on one place. And
I
it's
can
in my
already
phone.
do that.
Nice and simple and easy.
I can already
Nothing
do
wrong with
that, and so can every British citizen in this country. So why does that stop an illegal migrant from working?
It's another tool in stopping that.
Okay, and how does that tool
trade
work?
in illegal working, as well as more police resources, more intelligence, breaking up the business models, fining and sending to prison those rogue bosses. It's just another way of busting that up. And don't be so cynical, because it's just another way to achieve the goal that we all want, which is stopping the boats and stopping the rogue employers.
Not going to work, Paul.
This is another way to do it.
I'm a conspiracy
theorist.
theorist.
How do you know it's not going to work?
Cynical, because I'm living the real world.
It works in Estonia, it works in Denmark, it works in all kinds of other countries that have digital ID. Estonia is a fantastic example of this.
And how does this stop illegal migrants who want to come to Britain?
No
I don't
problem
think
with it at all.
I don't think Estonia's got a massive issue with people wanting to come to Estonia to work. There may be other pull factors.
But you're seeing it purely through the lens of small boats. What I'm saying is that it's a way for all citizens to access the labour market and have a single ID for all of us on our phones.
So it won't be compulsory
Well, then you've nothing to worry about.
So it won't be compulsory then?
Nothing to worry about.
No, so it won't be compulsory.
Well, we'll all have it on the phone, but you won't have to.
No. Is it compulsory or isn't it compulsory?
But we'll all have it.
No, I don't want it on my phone.
Like an NI number, it will be compulsory.
But so I will have
to.
So you don't have to have it, but you will have to have it.
Or an NHS number.
Oh, Paul.
You won't have to show it to the police, though, in the street.
Won't I?
And don't forget, the legislation hasn't even gone through yet. We don't know what the detail is because MPs haven't debated it yet.
And how many billion...
We haven't even had a green paper or a white paper.
No, exactly. And it's not going to go through by the end of the Parliament's promise. And how many billions will it cost? Any idea?
We don't know until we start the legislative process, do we? You used to be a lobby correspondent. You know full well how Parliament works. You can't cost it till you start designing it.
No, actually, quite the opposite. The idea is, if you think a policy is good, you should only know that based on the cost. You think the reforms migrant policy falls down because it may or may not be 10 billion quid out on savings. But yeah, let's just spend a fortune on an ID system that won't make a difference. Paul, I would love to do this all day. You are making a valiant effort. I'm going to give you a round of applause for making a good effort, because you're a damn sight better at this than the Prime Minister is. So appreciate you joining us, Paul Richards. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to someone who absolutely understands why we don't want to have digital ID cards. He's Ross Clark. He's written a book called The Road to Southend Pier, One Man's Struggle Against the Surveillance Society. That's up next. Stay tuned.
county.
Well, the Prime Minister wasn't saying, and nor would I, that people who are thinking of voting for Reform UK are racist. I do not think they are. Reform UK's leadership have been proposing some policies which look pretty racist to me, but they've also proposed privatising the health service, so you have to pay to see your GP. I suspect a lot of people thinking of voting Reform wouldn't agree with that. We also had Farage in the United States, in Congress, pleading with the United States to put sanctions on British workers to get rid of their jobs.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to have a conversation with someone who definitely does understand the possible threat of digital ID cards after our conversation with Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor, who thinks, frankly, I'm just basically getting my knickers in a twist, thinking we're going to turn into sort of, China and Stasi Germany if we do have to have a digital ID app on our phones. Let's talk to Ross Clark. He's a columnist at The Sun. He's also author of The Road to Southend Pier, One Man's Struggle Against the Surveillance Society. Very good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Look, Paul Richards reckons I've got my knickers in a twist. 2.3 million people signing a petition saying no to digital ID cards, this brick card app on your phone. We're all just really just being a bit silly, and there's nothing to worry about. It's going to be really convenient for us to have all our ID in one place. There's no risk to it, and miraculously, although no one's been able to explain why, it's going to deal with the issue of illegal migrants working. What do you make of those claims?
Absolutely ridiculous and absurd. There is no way that this digital ID card system is going to stop small boats arriving. There's no way it's going to prevent the Human Rights Act being used to deport criminals, terrorists.
No, but those people won't be able to get a job, we're told, and therefore they won't come here and work illegally, because miraculously these employers who have not been checking their right to work will suddenly start check their right to work.
Yeah, we already have national insurance numbers which denote your right to work, and if you're an employer, you're not bothering to ask for one of those at the moment. Why should you suddenly start asking for a digital ID? It's completely absurd.
It's bewildering.
I want to pick up on one thing, an incredible arrogant thing that Paul Richards said there. He said, we've all got smartphones. Yeah. I just looked up the statistics for this. Between the ages of 25 and 55-year-olds, about 99% of people have smartphones. Over 65s, it drops to 82%. And then when you go the over 75s, it drops to 72%. Yep. There's very good reason for that. It's because if you've got arthritis, if you've got poor eyesight and so on, a smartphone is a very difficult
absolutely.
piece of
and again, it's stuff that we've kind of almost, I didn't grow up with one, but like youngsters growing up with them, and I certainly had them since my 30s, and therefore it's very, you're used to having a mobile phone. A lot of these people don't even have a brick phone. But the crucial thing here is the idea that, okay, let's just say we all had iPhones or equivalent Samsungs or whatever, and just say everything. And what's the issue? Why should anyone be concerned about the government having all of your information on an app in one place?
Well, it creates a one-stop shop for fraudsters. At the moment, someone steals your identity. There is a bit of footwork involved in that. They've got to sort of collect information from different places. If we've got a digital ID database, they've only got to get into your system once. So, get into your phone. They've got your identity. And we've seen, from Jaguar to Marks and Spencer's and so on, the way that hackers are getting into these systems, which are notionally secure. It's not just sort of ignorant people who have been falling victim to
their password is password. No, exactly. I mean, even the banks. I mean, virtually every big bank, big cyber companies. People are getting hacked on a grand scale, and we've seen the government routinely. Just leaving information out. And that's the thing. At that point, someone's got access to your health records. You may have had an operation that you perhaps don't want your other half to know, or something. Your ability, your income. They've got access to every single part of your life.
And don't believe the government if they say they won't sell off this data to commercial interest, because look what happens with the electoral roll. Look what happens with the DVLA database, where the government just flogs off your information to these cowboy parking companies so they can issue their tickets and so on. We've had these databases, we sort of consent to these databases, and then the government doesn't stick to its side of the deal.
But what about the surveillance side of things? The concern that a lot of people have, and I share it, people have been paying attention to what happened during COVID, paying attention to what's been happening in China, the social credit system. So people say, oh, don't be so silly, it couldn't happen here. I mean, it literally happened here in 2020 and 2021. I don't know why people are surprised that it couldn't happen again. And this is the ability of the government to say, look, we can track what you buy, we can track when you've had a vaccine, we can track all your data in one place, and basically, if you haven't got up to date on your jabs, you can't buy things, you can't travel, you can't do that central data makes that possible, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and you can just imagine a future pandemic where we have a lockdown and we'll all be tracked by our phones. Pop down the shop and spend 5 minutes too long outside your house, then you'll be sprung with a fine. And
people think that's a joke. It literally happened.
Yeah, exactly. The possibilities for this. And this morning there's a story about the new nationalised rail company wants to use tracking our phones to charge us, as an alternative to buying a ticket. We'd just be tracked on our phones. Well, you've then got a system where you're tracking people around the country all the time. And
what about the argument? If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear, Ross?
Even if you've got nothing to hide, you run up to the problem of dealing with this bloody technology. On Friday night, I tried to renew my driving license card. These photo cards. It's always been fairly easy in the past, but now you've got to download some app to prove your identity.
Oh yeah, I had to do that the other day.
Circles of hell.
Yeah, and again, if it all doesn't work, how does it, you won't be able to access things in your life. This thing about the card, you can lose it, but you can get it replaced. I think the key thing is just the fact that it's going to be something that is going to be updating constantly. We're going to be talking more about that later in the show as well. Big thanks to you, Ross Clark, for joining us, columnist at The Sun, author of the book Road to Southend Pier. Appreciate you joining us. I'm going to get Sam Armstrong's thoughts on all of that in just a couple of moments. Do stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back to the show. It's just approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. If you're wondering why I'm a bit chirpy, it's a lovely, beautiful, sunny Monday morning. Got blue skies outside the studio window, and, crucially, I'm not at Labour Party conference. I love Liverpool, but no, the joy of not being at party conference is palpable. Lots of big speeches going on today, though, from an awful lot of key figures in the cabinet. They seem to be getting them all over and done with in one day. We'll be finding out more about what Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and indeed Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. It's difficult to remember who she is, isn't it? She won't be there long, won't have to remember her for much longer, what she is going to say as well. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. If you do miss anything of the show, you can take a look at my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Look that up, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Nigel Farage accusing Keir Starmer of insulting millions of voters worried about Britain's borders after the Prime Minister branded Reform's immigration plans racist and immoral. Meanwhile, at the conference today, the Home Secretary is going to declare that migrants' rights to settle in Britain will be dependent on them not claiming benefits, not committing crime, and they must show they contribute to society. The only difference between that and the Reform policy is whether it's backdated or not. One, though, racist and immoral. The other, the nice people are doing it, so it's a good thing. It's so difficult to keep up, isn't it? Plus, GPs are threatening to strike. Of course they are. I mean, which doctors haven't threatened to strike in the last couple of years? They're threatening to strike if the NHS makes it too easy for patients to get an appointment. The BMA said they'll take industrial action if the government goes ahead with plans to improve access to online booking systems. Plus, the NHS has published guidance praising the benefits of first cousin marriage, despite the hugely increased risk of birth defects. But apparently, it's linked to stronger extended family support systems and economic advantages. Genuinely, again, if we're going to talk about immoral, yeah, absolutely immoral. Plus, Rachel Reeves, in her big speech today, is set to announce that young people out of work for 18 months will lose their benefits. They won't lose their benefits, but she's got the government's youth guarantee, and she's going to promise that all people aged 18 to 21 will have education, training or work. Again, never going to happen, and leaving them out of work for 18 months is an absolute disaster at that point. We're going to talk about all of that. I particularly want to hear from you today about Reform's migration policy. Keir Starmer calling it racist and immoral, and then today his own Home Secretary announcing a remarkably similar plan for migrants seeking settled status. Also, why is the policy on migration intrinsically in any way racist? I don't remember anyone at Reform UK during that press conference mentioning anything to do with people's skin colour. Why is it that's where Keir Starmer always goes straight away? I want to know your reaction to all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. All together now. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Joining me once again today for all 3 hours is commentator Sam Armstrong. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Bit of a packed last half hour. Didn't get a chance to have a chat with you, so I want to come back to you first of all on ID cards before we talk about these racist policies. But on national ID cards, 2.3 by the end of the show. I'm guessing it's going to be 2.5 million people signing a petition to oppose digital ID cards. We just spoke to Ross Clark about it, and talking about, these aren't going to stop the small boat migrants getting a job. This is just abject nonsense. It's embarrassing. But there are just so many more concerns about these cards that make them different from having a passport, having a credit card, having an NHS app to renew your prescriptions. Why is it different? And why are the people like me who are worried about it not, we're not conspiracy theorists?
For the first time in our lifetimes, there is going to be somewhere, not entirely sure where, but probably provided by some private company that's paid for the research that's led to this, a database in which a file is kept on you. And the Julia Hartley-Brewer file will say what she was doing in 2005 and whether or not perhaps she wore a mask during COVID. And they may even go into your old file from when, during the pandemic, the government spy agency kept tabs on what you were tweeting and
sent it to a counter-terrorism unit in the United States. Nothing to see here, people. Nothing to see here.
And put it all into that one little repository, and then they're going to use that data to make decisions about For example, whether or not you get a council house, or whether or not you get seen by a GP today, or whether or not you're a good person or a bad person.
No, hold on a minute. I can
where-
imagine people listening here going, that's a load of nonsense. Why? And there's no one's talking about doing that. Well, that's a conspiracy theory.
The infrastructure that they are building takes us from something. We already have a national insurance number that identifies you as a British person. We already have
Or
passports.
able to work, yeah.
We already have driving licenses. This is something different. What is the difference between a driving licence, a passport, a national insurance number and this? What it is there will be one centralised computer system. And sure, maybe day one it will just have these little files attached to it. But do we really think that governments that love to keep tabs on people, that love data, think they can make everything, the more they know about us, the better they can keep control of us? Do we honestly think that that is where it's going to stop?
Exactly.
And that's what I worry about.
And it won't necessarily be in the case of a pandemic or a war. I mean, many people are predicting, anyone paying attention knows that one or both of those are going to happen again, probably in my lifetime, probably much sooner. I mean, and that's the thing. Think about it. It's like when you get a passport order, that's a moment in time, and it's proof. I think it's absolutely right. I should be able to prove who I am and what my nationality is going in and out of the country, or prove I've passed a test to drive. This is something that could be used. A, it's live, it's constant, it's updated constantly. B, it's got all your information in one place, which is supposed to be the selling point. But actually, having had my bag stolen a year ago, I can see why that would be a particular issue. If someone had access to your phone and could see all this stuff. But also the hacking risk, just from the nefarious actors. Given that the banks and Marks and Sparks can't protect their own data, the MOD can't protect their own data, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to trust them to protect mine. But so you've got that side of things. But the control aspect is the bit that most terrifies me. We've seen what's happened in China. It's very, very, very clear. And most people think, if you tell people about this, they think you're talking about some silly science fiction, dystopian Hollywood film. It is the case in China that you are constantly monitored and tracked. You get a score. You have your social credit score. If you do something, either committing a crime, okay, you might want to, great, it will deter people from committing crime. But some of the crimes, remember, write a tweet or say something critical, or maybe complain to your school because they brought another cross-dresser in and said it's about trans rights, yeah? Oh, we'll all be on that list, guys. So you lose your social credit for that. And at some point when you lose enough social credit, you can't buy things. You're not allowed to get a train ticket or buy a plane ticket. You're not allowed to attend a concert. You're not allowed to... why would they not include... for a disease which barely had any impact on people under the age of 70... They were excluding kids from school, youngsters from university, most of us from our jobs. You think, and they were going to try to stop us from going to watch a football match or going to the pub. You seriously think they wouldn't do that again? This is the thing I find extraordinary. To say that this is a conspiracy theory. It actually happened during they tried to do it. What happened to the truckers in Canada? When they just said we don't want to have vaccine passports to go to work. What's happened in New Zealand, in Australia, in terms of people, but also what is happening right now in China. This is not a dystopian science fiction future. It's in the here and now. It's happening already. Why do you think uniquely that our government is trustworthy when every government we've had today has proved itself to not be trustworthy?
There's also something very, very un-British about this proposal.
We're very different from European countries on this, aren't we?
They have had a papers, please country, but the UK has been different for two reasons. Firstly, because we're an island nation and people are not coming and going. And secondly, because broadly speaking, in the history of these islands, we have had a sense of community, a sense of locality, a sense of rootedness in our people, in which it meant we didn't need voter ID. Why? Because you knew who your neighbour was, and the person at your little polling station when you went to vote, my granny and my grandpa used to do it for years, they knew everybody. They'd cross their name off before they come in that village, and as a result, the policemen knew who the wrong ones were. People knew who each other were. And we got to have precious, valuable liberties, rights that our European cousins didn't have. But politicians have squandered that. They have squandered the trust that we have in one another, the familiarity, the sense of safety, such that they now turn around to us and they say, oh, well, everyone's feeling a bit dangerous, so now we need to keep tabs on you
But
instead.
also, again, this crucial relationship between the individual and the state, which is that, you know, and again, it's like the American Constitution, we the people. You know, I know we have a constitutional monarchy in that, but fundamentally, you know, overstep your mark, you're out. Yeah. We know that's how
it's happened in history.
And the monarchs know that. But at the end of the day, we're the people in charge. When people talked about returning sovereignty from the EU to Parliament, returning it to the British people, because we elect the MPs in Parliament. Ultimately, we are sovereign. And the rule is, in terms of criminal law, you know, it's not like the government allows us to do things. No, we can do everything that is not expressly forbidden by law, and everything else we do is no one's business. A police officer cannot stop me and say, what are you doing? None of your sodding business. Unless you can tell me the crime you are suspecting me of, you don't have a right to stop me and ask for my information. And that is really important. And this highlighted that if you've got nothing to fear, you've got nothing to hide. No, sorry, I've never had an affair. I don't have any dodgy financial dealings. I haven't got a criminal record. I've not got, you know, I haven't had, like, you know, health treatment I want anyone to know about. I'm going to, none of that. No, I have got nothing to fear in that sense, other than the fact it's none of the government's sodding business to know my personal details unless I choose to give them, or they're required by law, as in, yes, I'm required to pay taxes, so you need to know my income, and it's useful for me to be able to do my prescription online. I've got no problem with that, but I don't want anyone overseeing that and linking it to any other part of my life.
Yeah, and this comes as part of a pattern of other things as well. We know that the Bank of England is looking at introducing a central bank digital currency in which every transaction you make will be tracked, will be kept on a database. And look, I'll be honest, I don't trust this government. No. I don't trust the British government generally, which changes colours.
I wouldn't trust Reform or Tory or any government on this. I'm sorry, Tories proved themselves to be utterly untrustworthy.
We have some basic privacy that we're entitled to as people. We don't need the government to do it. We just want you to do your job, secure the borders, secure our freedoms, and get on with delivering.
Let's talk about secure government. One of the reasons, the reason that's been cited, so apart from that, it's all very convenient, and because Tony Blair had a quiet word and is set to make billions from it. And I'm sorry, Tony Blair, every solution to every problem is digital ID cards, and all his clients and all his, he's up to his neck in this. He really is. But Keir Starmer had a quiet word. You know, he reckons that ID cards is what's needed to tackle illegal migration. We had a record 125 migrants arrive from British shores in a single boat.
Mega dinghy.
A mega dinghy. But digital ID cards are apparently the answer. Meanwhile, we're talking about legal migration, and that's been front page news with Keir Starmer yesterday calling Reform's migrant policy racist and immoral. His claim being that, this idea that people who've come here and been promised a right to stay, that these are the part. He said they're part of the fabric of our society, But Nigel is outrageous to try and say you'd have to reapply and leave. Whereas the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood today is going to be announcing a policy, a good citizen test. So you basically, even if when you want settled status, you're going to have to prove your income. You're going to have to prove you made a contribution to society. I mean, it's like community. I'm sorry, if someone's paying millions in tax, I'm quite happy for them not to go and volunteer at the local library. Thank you very much. I'd rather they paid the tax and paid their way. I really think that's mad. But you have to not commit a crime and all the things. But this is basic bare minimum. That policy doesn't backdate, right? So that policy is okay, but Nigel Farage's policy is racist. Can you explain to me why that would be?
Keir Starmer is absolutely scrambling like a Prime Minister I have never seen before. He is the most unpopular British Prime Minister in history. Never been as unpopular.
Can we give him a round of applause? Come on. Well done, that Prime Minister.
It's nice to set a record for something.
No, exactly. He's good at something, being rubbish.
But look, this policy, the fact that this, for starters, the fact that you do not already have to prove that you're not a criminal, that you're making a contribution to society, that you're putting in more than you're taking out before we say to you, no, you get to stay here forever for the rest of your life after 5 years. I cannot understand why that's there. I do need to correct you on one thing, actually. This is also the case that if you've got asylum, asylum acceptors, after 5 years, you just get the right to stay forever. No matter if the country where you came from continues to be dangerous. And we know, by the way, that some so-called Afghan refugees are going back on holiday to Afghanistan. That's the level to which they're taking the mickey out of us. No matter if you're making a contribution, no matter if nothing, you stay here for 5 years. That's it. It's like squatters' rights. You're here for good. We can never get rid of you. Bring your aunts, bring your uncles. Bob's your uncle. Probably Bob and quite a few other people are your uncles, because they're all claiming to be your uncles when they're coming over.
No DNA. You can't have DNA tests. That would be illegal.
And that is the extent to which our systems have been abused. And if you want to know why your high street looks different, if you want to know why your doctor takes 3 weeks to see you when it only used to take 1 week, if you want to know why you're earning less for the same job you've always done, that's the reason why. Because our systems have been weaponized by dangerous people at times, opportunistic people at other times, who have milked it for everything it's worth. And politicians, if they think that throwing names around like racist or anything else is going to work anymore, they've got another thing
and
coming.
It's not even that it doesn't work anymore, as in put people off it. It actually makes people more determined, because when good people are being told they're racist to a policy, which by the way has no mention of race in it whatsoever, although statistically different countries do have very clear on average records of when they are. I mean, you know, it's really, really clear that there are some countries, I'm of the view, there are some countries we just go, I'm not sure, unless someone has got like a PhD.
A genuine brain surgeon.
No, a genuine brain surgeon's got a PhD. They've already got 3 multi-million-pound companies, and they're going to come here and create jobs. Unless you fit some of those rules, I'm pretty sure we don't necessarily need you to come and live in this country. I'm not sure you're going to be a net contributor. But this is a madness. I mean, I just find it extreme. But we've also got the issue, of course, we've had to import all these people, haven't we? Because A, it's improved our economy. Didn't do that. No. B, we needed them in NHS. No, we didn't need that. We could have just trained up people who had the grades and wanted to learn to be doctors and nurses. And B, because we haven't got these young people who won't work. We've got 1 in 8 young people in this country who are not, they're NEETs, not in education, employment or training. And I've been saying that statement, okay, the number varies, it goes up, it goes down. I've been talking about NEETs for about 15 years. These people are still, I do not understand why anyone finds it difficult to make sure that young people are doing something useful. They have no access to benefits, full stop. They're mum and dad's problem. And as we were discussing earlier, if your kid doesn't have a work ethic and doesn't have any qualifications because you are such a useless parent, that's going to be your problem, not ours. I'm sorry. I consider the job of a parent to be turn out a nice, law-abiding person who can have relationships, have friends, works hard at school, and some kids aren't academic. That's not the problem. I would rather my kid had a work ethic than straight A-levels, because a work ethic will get you further in life. And there's no excuse for any parent who's doing their job even vaguely properly to not turn out a kid who can go out and get a job and understands hard work, and whether it's bar work or cleaning the streets or cycling around. I mean, apparently there are loads of jobs going delivering takeaways because all the illegal migrants are able to do those jobs. So I mean, it just seems to me blatantly obvious. So Rachel Reeves is saying it's really bad for young people to be out of work for a long time. So she's going to allow them to be out of work for 18 months. So a tenth of their life, they're going to be. That is not tenth. That's wrong maths. Apologies, but that is mad. I mean, that's absolutely mad that they should be doing that. I mean, insane that they should be doing that. But I would say 3 months max, and then we are going to put you on workfare, and you're going to be cleaning the streets, and you're going to be doing something useful. Otherwise, mum and dad are going to have to pay for you. End of. I can solve this for you in 6 months.
When did we lose the idea that the welfare state was something you had to pay into before you got something back? You have to make a contribution in the good times so that there was a safety net in the bad times. That was how it was sold to the British public. That was how the system was built. That was how it was designed. And there are pensioners in this country that have paid in their entire lives and are struggling because it can be tough to survive on the state pension with all the stuff. And how insulting is it to them for an 18-year-old Wally or worse to be sat around drinking cider, smoking cannabis, playing his Xbox, on the rock and roll already? It is not good for that person. It is unfair for everybody else. And I think we all know There are people in our local area that we've met, we've seen, we're aware of who they are, that are swinging the lead, and it is not fair. It is not fair for the rest of us, and it's about
time. It's not fair on them as well.
It's not fair on them, and it's about time, actually, as a society, we got back to the idea that we just said to people, no, hang on, shame on you. That is shameful to sit around all day in your front garden, drinking and shouting and causing a mess.
That's what the only reason I work is so I don't spend all day doing that. I would be doing that.
And look,
I'm having a great time.
I accept that the biggest problem in our country right now is migration and the way that they are taking the mick. But I have seen this trend.
But if employers couldn't employ people illegally like that, or couldn't employ people on cheap rates because we've got mass immigration, they would have to trade up these young people. They wouldn't have an excuse. There would be jobs, and when they're hungry enough, they will do the work.
But I have seen this trend, and Julia, you and I know we've had phone calls on this topic before, when people go and they say, look, the migrants are coming over here, they're taking for all of this, why shouldn't I get what I possibly can get? And I'd say to anybody listening, maybe they know somebody like this, maybe they thought about it themselves, don't let them bring us down to that level. So the fact that people are breaking into this country illegally doesn't mean that we have to go and nick money off people that are working, that are trying hard, in order for us to just sit around cushy at home, because it's not right. That's not the British way, and we should be better than that.
Absolutely. Hear to all of that. You're on fire today, as always on a Monday morning. We get him going on a Monday, and he gets us going. Perfect stuff. 11:23 is the time. You're going to get us going with your phone calls now. 0344 499 1000. Lots of messages coming in as well about how Reform's migration policy is racist and immoral, but the Labour's isn't. It's all to do whether it's backdated or not. But why did we want to have millions of people who are not net contributors, either financially or in any other way, to this country, staying here with the right to stay here forever? And bring all their family members. And then we can pay their pensions as well. I thought the whole point was we had an ageing society. We didn't want that. We'll talk about all of that up next. Give us a call. This is Talk.
What you were asking me.
The simple truth is that Keir Starmer is desperately trying to regain some credibility when it comes to patriotism. And frankly, I don't think anybody is buying it. This is a party that mocks the St George's flag that people are flying from their cars and homes. Keir Starmer himself described all immigration legislation as racist, so he chucks that word around rather too loosely. The fact is, reform policies are nonsense and undeliverable, but he is trying to make himself sound tough. And frankly, I don't think anyone's buying it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:26 is the time. Sam Armstrong's with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. You are on the phones and on the text. Let's get some of those messages, particularly about reforms, migration policy being racist and immoral, says Keir Starmer yesterday. But today, his Home Secretary is announcing a very similar plan for migrants seeking settled status. It just isn't backdated. I'm not quite sure why a date makes something immoral or not. They're a part of the fabric of our society, the people who've come here and apparently are net contributors, but we should keep them anyway, apparently. Gary says it seems that anyone who disagrees with any Labour government policy is now classed as a racist. I think you're pretty much right there. Darren says this Labour government is causing all the divisions in this country with their blinkered policies. Simon says, would you say that to Trump? He's doing the same over in the US. Sue says Starmer is an absolute hypocrite. Tracy says this PM is laughable, opens his mouth, puts his foot in it every single time. And Emma says nobody cares what the uni party thinks or says old news, reform is the future. And James says, how dare Starmer? Reforms policy is common sense, not racist. Honestly, this Labour lot are dreadful. I mean, I'm always stunned that they manage to be more dreadful every single day, but they do manage it. Let's go to the phone lines. Holly is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Holly. What do you want to say?
Hi, good morning,
Hello,
Julie.
good morning.
So I wanted to talk about how the Overton window for the British Pride has changed, because I have not ever felt ashamed to talk about the pride that I have for my country. My granddad fought for this country and he fought for this flag. And I went to the Unite the Flags march, and it was a beautiful thing with beautiful people of all ages and backgrounds who just wanted stability back in this country.
I know a number of people who it's the first march they've ever been on. That said, I've got some issues with some of the speakers on the stage, but most people I know never got that far, didn't listen to them. Some of the things the speakers were saying were absolutely horrific. Some.
We didn't get that far.
No, exactly. But the vast majority of people were just saying, I care about my country, quite rightly.
And yeah, we were some of the ones that didn't make it to the actual speeches.
Yep.
We were cut off by the police, but everybody was so patient, and most people just trundled off and walked home.
Yeah, like normal people.
That itself was so British and beautiful to see, you know.
Yeah.
But to then see on the news that we're all being called racist is absolute poor leadership.
Yep.
You cannot call your potential voter base racist.
Well, I don't think they are going to be voting for him now, but that's the thing. But it doesn't work anymore, does it? It doesn't work. Calling people racist or bigot used to shut people up and make people wary, and now people are like, fine, okay, just call me racist. I mean, again, no one mentioned race, did they? No one mentioned the foreign policy. No one mentioned it.
It's never been about race. It's never been about your skin colour. I have always felt very proud to live in a country that can offer refuge to people from other places that need it. But when the system that created such a refuge capability is now being abused, I don't see how digital IDs does this. We used to be a high trust society. Digital IDs will create a further low trust society.
Absolutely.
And really what you should be doing is stopping the system that's enabling people to abuse our country and the benefits and services that it was once able to offer, when the British people are now not able to access the services that they pay for themselves. There's something shockingly wrong in this country, and you do not need to be highly educated or politically minded to see that.
I think it kind of helps if you're not, actually. I think that's they live in such a rarefied world, some of these people. They don't get it. Holly, that is such a great call. I think you have just articulated so brilliantly how so many people feel. And again, just ordinary people, they can see and hear what's going on in this country. They know what's happening, and you know, shouting names at them ain't going to make it go away. Thank you so much for that call. Lenny's on the line in Liverpool. Lenny, you got a tough act to follow there. What do you want to talk about? Lenny, good morning to you, my darling. Hello, Lenny. Are you there? Have we lost Lenny? Oh darn! I'm just gonna make. Hopefully we can get him on. But he did say. I think what he was going to talk about was it what employer is going to want to take on a lazy British youth who's been forced to work for them? Sam Armstrong, what would you say to that? Because that is a concern. A lot of employers are going, yeah, but I don't want to take. I want to take on, say, you know, the Eastern European guy who's turned up and is. Oh no, sorry, we got him back. Apologies. Sorry, I'm going to go. Lenny. Just say. I think you were going to ask about why would employers want to employ lazy British youth?
Yeah. Well, we had a retail outlet from '86 to '07, and with the new employment laws, what employer in the right mind would employ somebody who doesn't want to work? You'd be a liability to the firm and could cost a lot of money.
And especially under the new employment rules, where basically, you know, they're not on a trial probation period for quite a bit of time. They get rights from day one and tribunal rights. But is there an argument that I mean, I know a lot of employers have said to me, yeah, fine, we put out jobs to local people. I had a guy, he literally started at the bottom himself as an apprentice, school leaver at 16, and he now runs this massive building company. And they go out and he goes, I want to give opportunities. He goes, literally, we have 20 jobs, only 12 people apply. We take 6 on. 4 of them don't turn up on the first day. The other 2 don't even turn up by the Friday. And he goes, what's the point?
Yeah, but the thing is, if you do take someone on, they've got the employment rights from day one, and you can't get rid of them, and they'll be a liability.
Yeah.
You know.
So how do we make those young people turn up to work with the right attitude? I mean, other than basically, frankly, giving a lot of parents a good hard talking to, probably a bit of a slap about how to do their job as a parent.
Well, you want to give the employer an opportunity to have a probation period where they can get rid of their unsuitable employees, because, as I say, it'll could cost the business a lot of money over the year. You can't get rid of them, and if you do get rid of them, you've got to pay them compensation and this, that and the other. You know.
No, you make a very good point. If only anyone in the top of Labour had actually ever run a business, or a small business in particular, and actually could understand these things, eh? Lenny, thank you for that. He's in Liverpool, I think, not a Labour Party conference. Very brief response to that from Sam.
Well, look, I agree on the probation period, of course I do, but I will say this to businesses. You cannot just keep pulling on the lever of importing somebody because it is difficult to train British people up. I get it, but one of the things you're going to have to do when we stop the flow of migration, hopefully get to negative migration even, is you're going to have to pay people a little bit more to do the jobs. Yeah. The markets will adjust, everything will balance itself back out, but British people need to be doing these jobs, and if you as an employer have to pay more, I'm sorry, you do. You just cannot.
But we as consumers will have to accept that we also have to pay more, but we'll be paying a lot less to fund all the people who are not net contributors who come to this country.
Hotels will be cheaper.
Hotels will be cheaper. Housing will be cheaper. Yeah, indeed. 11:33 is the time. We'll take a quick break. Up next, we are going to be talking about why are NHS GPs now threatening to strike, and why is the NHS supporting first cousin marriage when it's really, really bad for children. We'll talk about that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about the NHS and strikes, because I mean, we're either talking about waiting lists and how you can't get treatment, or we are talking about some kind of people working in the NHS going on strike. This time it's the GPs. The BMA GPs committee are threatening to go on strike over, well, your ability to have easier access to book an appointment. So what's really going on? Let's talk to Martin Gower. He's a former NHS Trust chairman and joins us. Good morning to you, Martin.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, on the face of it, this sounds like a very poor reason for GPs to want to go on strike, but I'm sure I hope there's a sensible reason behind it.
Well, the reason is that unless they're paid considerably more money, they will threaten to go on strike. It's a slightly odd one, of course, because the GPs aren't employed by the NHS anyway. Yeah.
But I thought they're saying this isn't about money so much. This is about the fact that people can basically, people can just book their appointments online. But then there are some people who basically want to come and see the doctor every single day. And having been a GP's receptionist, worked for my mum for a summer, I was very aware there are people who don't need to see the doctor. They just think they do. And then other people who do need to see the doctor can't get in.
The GPs I've talked to are typically about 40% of the people in the waiting room needn't be there to see a GP. Yeah. And they are what they call the frequent flyers. Yeah. But that's something for them to manage at their own surgery. This isn't something that the BMA actually should really be involved in. And why threaten to strike? This is an issue that if people rock up virtually unannounced, or make an appointment just because they want to see the doctor, of course it's a waste of time. With GPs, you often get this sort of strange dichotomy that they will tell you in one breath how busy, stressed out and overworked they are, and the next breath they'll say they've got a whole lot of people there who needn't be seeing them.
Yeah, what I find very strange is whenever I go to my GP surgery, there's no one there.
That's absolutely true.
I mean, literally, like, you're the only person in the waiting room. But they're absolutely packed. And you're like, well, where is everybody then?
But Julia, this is a problem with the capitation system we use, which is almost unique. GPs aren't paid on activity. They're paid on how many people are registered. And then there is an algorithm based on geographical and economic issues in where they serve. However, everywhere else, they're paid on activity. They're paid on what they do.
What you actually do. And I know, like, GPs will get paid extra. Like, one of the reasons why they were also keen to roll out the COVID jab was because even though you couldn't get an appointment if you needed cancer treatment, but they got paid extra to do the COVID jab. They get paid extra for this, for that. And you said they're private contractors within the NHS system. But I think isn't their argument that basically, practice should still allow patients to book slots using the phone or by turning up in person, not just online. But requesting an appointment is very different from whether you get an appointment. And I say, having worked as a receptionist, people go, I urgently need an appointment. You go, look, OK, the GP's going to finish at 6, but I can put you in at the end of the day. But that's the only appointment I've got. And they go, oh, in that case, I'll do it next Thursday. Do you think, well, so you obviously just lied to me. But I suppose that's where they kind of get to know, as you say, who the frequent flyers are. But also, this person, they only call when there's a problem. I think if I ask for an appointment, it's because I need an appointment. I wouldn't be bothering them. I've got better things to do with my time.
Absolutely. And if what your issue is could be dealt with on the phone or on a video call.
Always.
To prefer it because it's easier and you can work around it. Yeah. But I do think that when you look at other countries, the primary care systems in those countries actually encourage people to talk to other people in the organisation rather than say, I want to see the doctor. Yeah. When I went to live in America, I phoned because I had a bad back, saying I really need to see the doctor, to my health provider through the company I was working with. And they said, well, you've got a bad back, Mr. Gower, we don't think doctors are all that good at backs.
They're just going to refer you to someone else. We'll refer you to a
physical therapist.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people don't know. But again, I think GP surgeries do vary an awful lot, don't they? But here's the other NHS story I want to talk to you about. The NHS has published guidance last week, the NHS England's Genomics Education Programme. And this guidance is praising the benefits of first cousin marriage, despite hugely increased risk of birth defects. It's actually illegal in many countries. And they're saying it's linked to stronger extended family support systems and economic advantages. Despite the fact, it is legal to do. In fact, it has a huge increase in the chances of genetic deformity. And we see in particular Pakistani immigrants continuing which is completely the norm in Pakistan, first cousin marriage. And it means there has been a huge rise in deformities in birth defects in children in that community. I mean, I would outlaw it today. What on earth is the NHS doing saying, oh, well, you know, there's a good side to it as well?
Well, I think, Julia, they're being sort of ultra politically correct. They don't want to be seen as being racist, you know, and against some of those who like first cousin marriages, which I think are generally arranged marriages as well. I don't think necessarily all these guys choose their first cousins to marry.
It's about keeping the sort of the family wealth in one family, isn't it?
Absolutely. But my view on it is a very, very clear one. It absolutely should be made illegal. In Bradford, they did the famous big study. I think it was called Bradford Born. And they did 13,000 sample on this from both main communities in Bradford, and they found very clearly that congenital disorders were twice as likely to happen in a first cousin marriage than any other marriage. And frankly, that to me, this is a health issue. It's not a social issue.
No, exactly. It's a health issue, but it's also a cost issue. A huge impact on the NHS. And educational resources and lifetime resources because of the massively raised increase in genetic deformities. And by the way, also in the communities where there is first cousin marriage, also higher birth rates.
Absolutely.
A larger number. I think it's immoral to deliberately try and basically knowingly bring a disabled child into the world without caring. I'm not saying in order to have to abort, but if you're not doing everything you can to make sure, not drinking or smoking and things like that, I think it's immoral. But then to say, oh, and now the problem becomes everyone else's. So there is an impact on everybody from this policy, but the NHS pushing it, I mean, I find quite bizarre, and especially as actually there are also some other issues about women's rights, which is that, as you say, arranged marriages not necessarily out of the choice of the woman involved.
Well, I think arranged marriages as well should be made illegal in this country for UK citizens.
Well, forced marriages, but I mean, if it's people,
forced. Oh yeah,
But no. There are lots of people who have arranged marriages and are very happy with them. It's just about
Well, I think even in other communities going back many years, I think mothers had a great influence on who their daughters married.
Yeah.
Not necessarily first cousins though. But this has been known in this country so long.
Yeah.
This goes back, I mean, way back in the middle of the last century. People knew that cousin marriages were not a good idea.
Yeah.
If you wanted to have children, it's been established. And I know that friends of mine traced that there were first cousin marriages in their background, and it had gone through the family. That there'd been children who had suffered with learning disabilities and physical.
I mean, there's a reason why there's greater deformity in certain, royal families that all kind of interbreed. I mean, again, look, we're careful about zoo animals, for goodness sake, but we're not worried about human beings. And no, but that's the reality, isn't it? Martin Gower, thank you for joining us, former NHS Trust Chairman. Well, he says, for instance, he would ban first cousin marriage. I would absolutely ban it. Certainly wouldn't be pushing it like the NHS is doing. Sam Armstrong, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's quite apart from anything else. It's disgusting. It's weird. It's wrong. Leave your family members alone, right? There's plenty of partners out there. I don't care if it's normal for Norfolk. I don't care if it's part of your culture. I don't care, whatever, right? We in this country, we made a decision a very long time ago that we were going to move on from that.
But
kind
also,
of stuff.
this is an immigrant group, and we know everything comes down to race in this country. You know as well as I do. If this was something, for instance, that a white immigrant population were doing, it'd have been banned, right? But but that's the reality. This is trying to be PC. But what is the NHS? How can the NHS, when they're dealing with and we're paying for them, dealing with the outcome of this, to do something that is a higher chance? I mean, if you see a pregnant woman smoking, right, or getting drunk, right, fetal alcohol syndrome, a massive issue now, or doing drugs, we would rightly judge. You have a baby with your first cousin, pretty much doing the same thing to your child. It's immoral.
You go into a children's hospital anywhere in the country, you go to particularly the gastrointestinal wards there, they will tell you that pretty much near enough every child there with serious gastrointestinal problems is the child of cousin marriage, either in the Irish traveller community where it still happens, or in the Pakistani community. It happens everywhere, every children's hospital. The nurses, the doctors, they'll all tell you no one listens to them, and their leadership put out posters like this encouraging it.
And the child, most of all, is the one that pays for it, but then
spend
society
their entire
does
childhood
as well.
in a hospital room
just
with
awful.
horrible medical treatments all the way through. Just marry someone that's not your cousin. There's plenty of people out there.
It's just immoral. It really is. Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. But obviously, if we talk about it, we're obviously racist and immoral because that's what Keir Starmer thinks about every conversation we have. 0344 499 1000. We're not allowed to do facts anymore in this country. Up next, we are going to be talking about what Rachel Reeves is going to say today. She's going to be speaking very soon, getting young people back to work. And why is it that Keir Starmer failed, I think it was 7 times, to make an absolute pledge that he would not see VAT raised at the next budget? That's up next. This is Talk.
The simple truth is that Keir Starmer is desperately trying to regain some credibility when it comes to patriotism. And frankly, I don't think anybody is buying it. This is a party that mocks the St George's flag that people are flying from their cars and homes. Keir Starmer himself described all immigration legislation as racist, so he chucks that word around rather too loosely. The fact is, reform policies are nonsense and undeliverable, but he is trying to make himself sound tough, and frankly, I don't think anyone's buying it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:50 is the time. Well, let's talk right now about where we are with the economy, because certainly Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, she used to work at the Bank of England as an economist. Did you know? She never mentions it. But she's going to be giving a speech at Labour Party conference, and she's going to be talking about how she wants to get people back to work, particularly young people. But what is very interesting is how much she's going to tell us about what's happening in her autumn budget, particularly after the Prime Minister failed 7 times yesterday to rule out raising VAT. Let's talk about this with the Institute for Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim. Good morning to you, Reem.
Hi, good morning.
Thanks for joining us. Let's talk first of all about the VAT pledge, because that was one of the 3 key pledges that would not be, that there will be no raise in VAT, national income tax or national insurance, working people, then they put it on employers. they may have got away with that. I don't know. But how likely do you think it is we will see a rise in VAT?
Well, it sounds as though from this morning's reporting that it isn't going to happen at the very least, but you're absolutely right. I mean, yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer failed to denounce it, so it sounds as though it was something that they were considering. If it is, of course, we'll hear after 12 o'clock from Rachel Reeves and hear what she has to say exactly on that. But you're absolutely right, Julia. What's interesting about this is they tried to sort of play with the definition of working people and say, when we're increasing employers' national insurance contributions, that is not increasing taxes on working people, which is, of course, a complete lie because it's the difference between the impact of tax and the incidence of tax. We absolutely know that increasing taxes on employers does have an impact on jobs, and it means that there are significantly less jobs available. We've seen a decline in the number of vacancies. In addition to that, we also saw the increase in the minimum wage, which, of course, adds additional pressure to employers. So
which is great for those on the minimum wage, but it does have a knock-on impact, not just in private sector employers, whether it's worth hiring that extra employee or being able to put up wages. And again, you get the differentials for the next people up saying, well, what about my pay rise? But also for the public sector, because we're paying the minimum wage increase for everyone in the public sector too.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is the problem. I mean, of course, it sounds very nice to increase the minimum wage level. It increases the amount of support that those young people or generally people on low wages get. But in reality, it does have unintended consequences. And it means that, generally speaking, there will be less work available. Now, that's one of the damaging things about that. I mean, you know, I was on a minimum wage job when I was 16. Perhaps the company that I was employed by wouldn't have been able to hire me if minimum wage was a lot higher. You know, there are many countries like Sweden, which do not have any minimum wage laws, and actually it can be negotiated freely.
I don't agree. I don't agree with that. I mean, George Osborne always argued against it, saying, we'd lose a load of jobs. I think employers should be able to have to pay a bare minimum of what people can actually live on. I think someone should be able to, you know, pay some basic bills on a minimum wage job. A lot of people don't just do that at 16; they do it their whole life, and people should be able to live on the minimum wage. A lot of people don't have power to negotiate their pay.
Well, the point would be, how do we give them more of that power? We give them more of that power by having a growing economy in which there are more vacancies for them to choose from.
This is true.
That is exactly how you ensure that employees have more power.
Yeah, but there are always some people who could be taken advantage of, and that's when we see where employers are going, well, let's go and hire these illegal migrants who can't work because we don't have to pay them minimum wage. We can pay them half that or less than that, and they can't complain if we give them bad conditions or unsafe conditions because they've got nowhere to go for redress. So I'm not in favour of that, and I know a lot of, you know, I think we do need protections at the bottom end of the market. However, a lot of people entering that market will be young people. Now, the Chancellor is saying today she wants this youth jobs guarantee. We've heard, I mean, I don't know how many times we've heard these stories before, but we've got 1 in 8 young people who are NEETs, not in education, employment or training. It's gone up recently, but it's always been somewhere in that sort of realm for a very long time. It goes up, it goes down. But she says basically after 18 months, which is a shockingly long time, you basically, if you haven't got a job, we will find you something, either employment training or something else, but you won't be entitled to your benefits. First, do you believe even for a nanosecond she's actually going to follow through on that?
Well, this is the point, right? Do we actually think that the government have the guts to actually implement this scheme in the first place is the real question. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm hoping we'll get some of those answers this afternoon. Who are these businesses that are going to be employing these young people? Is 18 months a little bit too young? I mean, effectively, we've seen a huge amount of people go from being economically inactive because they were students to then being economically inactive due to long-term sickness. So between 2021 and 2022, it was more than 63,000 people that went from being economically inactive because they were students to then being long-term sick. 18 months is an awfully long time to be out of work, and I think that it would get them used to not being in employment, especially if you're one of those.
And a big red flag to an employer, and as an employer said earlier, you know, I'd have to have a guarantee I could get rid of these people. Because why would I want to employ someone who's basically been lazy for the last 18 months? I mean, it should be something like 3 months max, shouldn't it? And then we're going to find you work. But the reality is,
indeed, in most US states, it's about 6 months. So you're absolutely right. It should be a lot less.
I think 6 months too long.
Well, indeed. I mean, part of the problem with this, Julia, is that there is no guarantee that any of this is going to work. I mean, how many times have we heard of these new employment schemes? Part of the problem is it is going to be taxpayers that are footing the bill for a lot of the wage subsidies. So the government have said that they are going to be subsidising a lot of these employment schemes. You and I, taxpayers, are going to be footing the bill for part of this. But there's also the part of the problem where it's huge amounts of bureaucracy that are going to actually cost this. I mean, it's going to take thousands of new civil servants to actually implement the scheme in the first place. You know, benefits are effectively a cash transfer, which doesn't cost a huge amount in terms of the manpower to effectively have it happen, other than the actual money that's being spent. This scheme will be awfully expensive.
But I think getting people back to work can be very expensive. But I do think one of the cheaper ways is to just simply, I mean, you're not entitled to any benefits. I genuinely think an awful lot of parents who don't really care if their kid's feckless or not, when they're getting their housing benefit paid into the family coffers, or their child is able to move out and get a flat, you know, bed sit or whatever it is. I think when their kid is their problem, they're not earning, they're not doing training, and they're basically, you're not entitled to a single thing. I think a lot of parents might wake up and maybe start, you know, basically being a little bit firmer with their kids. But I think it needs to start an awful lot earlier. But this is the thing, as you say, the government backtracked on their pathetically minimal attempt at dealing with the welfare bill. I mean, there's just no chance whatsoever that they will actually just say to people, no, you're not sick, you feel anxious on a Monday morning, you feel a bit depressed. Well, doesn't everybody on a Monday morning? You know, lovely blue skies today, you should be feeling. Off you go, go and find a job. They are not going to.
And
they're
part
going
of this,
do this.
You're absolutely, part of it is a cultural problem, isn't it? I think a lot of young people tend to think that they have a right to not work. This is also an unanswered question. The government is saying, at least with the leaks that we've seen this morning and yesterday, that there will be some requirements for sort of if you have a genuine reason to not work, but we have no idea what that genuine reason is.
Well, tennis elbow. I mean, you know what I mean? But that's the thing. But also, it's not just a lot of young people think they've got a right to not work. They've also got a right to not take a job that they think's beneath them. We're going to have to get rid of that. I genuinely, I think one of the biggest problems we've got in society, I'm not joking, is not low self-esteem in young people. It's high, it's overweening high self-esteem. They need to be told, you have no opinions worth listening to, you don't know enough about the world, you're barely employable, and you need to prove yourself. Love you loads, but off you go. I genuinely think that would be a healthier thing to tell our young people. No offence if you're 18 and you think differently, but I'm still right.
You're right. Well, I think we wrap people in cotton wool far too much. And look, the benefits bill is huge. The fact that we have a situation in which 25% of 16 to 65-year-olds are currently out of work is insane. And part of it is the huge benefit bill.
Absolutely. Reem Ibrahim, thank you so much indeed, spokesman, Institute of Economic Affairs. See, I can't imagine Reem ever being unemployed. She'd be negotiating her salary. But you can tell, but not all young people are like that. And a lot of that is down to failed parenting, failed schooling. But at the end of the day, we can't go, oh, well, then we'll just leave you on benefits the rest of your life. Not going to happen.
No, we need to get a lot of these people into proper apprenticeships, proper jobs. Far too many are going off, as Reem says, to university where they're not getting skills that actually work for anyone at all. So it's not complicated to get this right. You can train our young people, you can get everybody working, contributing, and you can avoid importing hundreds of thousands of people a year into the country.
It's almost like it all ties in together. But I think it will be very expensive in the early days, but you've got to follow it through. I don't believe for a nanosecond that this government's going to follow any of this through or do any of it. But there we are. Rachel Reeves is up speaking now, but we like you too much to take it live. We're going to take the news. We're back up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, your connected device, it's great to have your company this afternoon with you all the way till 1 o'clock. An awful lot more to talk about. Don't forget, if you've missed any of the show, why would you want to do that, guys? You can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Nigel Farage accusing Keir Starmer of insulting millions of voters worried about Britain's borders after the PM branded reforms immigration plans racist. No one had mentioned colour, but apparently they're racist. Oh, and immoral. The PM on Sunday called out the leader's plan to tear up rules regarding indefinite leave to remain, not just for people coming in the future, but people who are already here, so you could have to reapply, saying it needs to be called out for what it is. What, a sensible policy that will save us money instead of allowing people to stay here and claim benefits even though they're not net contributors? Policy I think an awful lot of people would agree with. Especially, I would have thought, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who later today is declaring that migrants' right to settle in Britain will be dependent on them not claiming benefits, not committing crime, and being a benefit to society, which is, as far as I can tell, pretty much the same policy as reforms, except she doesn't want to backdate it. That's the bit that made it racist, apparently. I know, I'm as much of a loss as you are. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he would grant amnesty to Hamas if they release the remaining hostages and leave Gaza, bearing in mind pretty much most of Hamas's leaders are already dead. Netanyahu previously said that crushing Hamas in its entirety was the only outcome that would end the war in Gaza. He's meeting with President Trump today in the White House to discuss a US 21-point plan for peace. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson will not be welcome at the royal family's Christmas celebrations this year, we've been told. The King is said to be keen on keeping the scandal-ridden pair at arm's length after the latest revelations about, now it's the Duchess of York's contact with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted. As follows, all cause revelations. And of course, as we all knew, Prince Andrew was in the Epstein files. And I have to say, I think a lot of people will be thinking long time passing for this to have already happened. Plenty more to talk about. Joining me for all the chat today, I'd like to say, Sam Armstrong, commentator, joins us always on a Monday morning and a Monday afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Good afternoon now. Just to let you know, Rachel Reeves is giving a speech right now in Liverpool Labour Party conference. And because I like you so much and also want to keep my own sanity, also, I think me falling asleep while on air would be a bit rude. We're not taking it live. We tend not to take these things live. It has to be an absolute belter, take it live. Rachel Reeves does not give belter speeches. She's already started off a speech saying when Labour came to power, the UK faced a choice between investment... Sorry. Whoa, back in the room. Investment and decline. The Chancellor began saying that last year people voted for a government to invest in Britain's renewal and to leave behind the same Tory economics.
We got declined, didn't we? I'm sorry.
Rachel, just the cheering in the streets. That's what you're getting from her. We're asking you to get in touch. Lots more calls on the board, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about anything we're talking about. I mean, here's the thing. If you want to watch Rachel Reeves' speech on another channel somewhere for me, and then just give me a call and let me know what she said, that would be really great because it would save us doing it. I don't think you're going to say anything very useful. I really think we're not going to miss out. But I particularly want to hear about Keir Starmer yesterday calling reforms migration policy racist and immoral, and today his Home Secretary announcing remarkably similar policy. What's your reaction to that? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate. Message also be getting in touch on ID cards as well, which apparently are the solution to illegal migration. No one could quite work out why it would be, but it would definitely be the solution to us being free in this country. Sam Armstrong, just come back to you. Rachel Reeves, look, she's under a lot of pressure. It does look like she has ruled out cutting, putting a hike on VAT, breaking that manifesto pledge. Starmer failed 7 times to do that yesterday. But you have got the problem whenever, you talk in advance of a budget. If you do rule out something but not something else, you're going to get into that mess. But everyone knows the numbers don't add up. We're spending too much. There isn't enough tax receipts coming in, even though it's at an eye-wateringly high level. Debt is ballooning. And this government simply is not willing or able to do the cutting that is necessary to not raise taxes. So we know something's coming down the line.
Something has got to give, and I'm afraid the people that are going to be expected to give, the people that are going to be expected to bear the load are the same people that always do it time and time again. That's British businesses, British workers, British pensioners. And that is going to mean tax rises are going to have to come somewhere or another. We just know this. We know it. Now, she said, I think, that they're going to rule out putting the rate of VAT up, but what she hasn't done is ruled out putting the threshold down. So if you're a white van man, you're going to have to all of a sudden going to have to start charging your customers.
Because it's about 85k. But there's an extraordinary cut-off point when you actually look at small businesses that basically you get to just under that threshold, but the amount of extra work you're going to be involved and the extra fees you're going to have to put up, a huge number of companies.
There's 6 times as many businesses earning 80 to 85 as there are 85 to 90.
It tells you it has an impact. Oh, it's soul-destroying, isn't it? Thank you very much, Sam. We'll get your reaction to what my next guest has to say. He's former political editor of The Sun, George Pascoe Watson. Good afternoon to you, George.
Julia.
Thank you. George. Sorry, I assumed you just dozed off after starting speaking because you were watching a bit of Rachel Reeves' speech on the sidebar on the TV.
Well, she is actually already, she's delivered perhaps the most powerful point of her speech, which was to stand up to some hecklers who were taking her on the Palestinian issue. And I think commentary is already saying that might be the strongest bit of her speech.
Well, we know that the Home Secretary, what is she this week? Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, she has already said that the Palestinian state is an inalienable right of the Palestinian people. I mean, I'm just surprised they aren't just all waving Palestinian flags all week, but there we are. You say heckled by Palestinian protesters. She said, we understand your cause. Someone was shouting, Israel is committing genocide. They're not. Chancellor said, we understand your cause and we understand your cause and we're recognising a Palestinian state. I can't keep it up, it hurts. But we are now a party of government, not a party of protest. And then, she just carried on. But anyway, let's talk about what she and the Prime Minister are saying. Because in particular, I want to read to you a statement that Starmer put out on Twitter this weekend saying, it's national division or it's national renewal. That's the fight we face. What on earth do you think he meant by that?
Now, here's an interesting thing about Keir Starmer. Lots of the language that he's used in the last year since becoming Prime Minister has actually been quite convoluted. It's not been very specific. It ranges around. It's very hard to nail him down. And in fact, I think the Sunday Times did a big piece on this yesterday about analysing the language that he uses. It's a problem for him. It's a problem for the Labour Party. It's a problem for the government because communications is so critical that if you can't nail somebody down and be very, very clear about what your vision is, then it's hard to pull people with you. Now, of course, he might argue that being broad and general allows him to keep as many people in a loose coalition together as possible, which, of course, is the other trick in modern politics today. But what it means is we end up, as you say yourself, what does he mean? And that's a big problem for him and the people around him.
Yeah, I mean, no one knows what he stands for. No one knows what he's saying, even when he's just said it. He doesn't answer questions. I mean, he's an absolute disaster. We see this. He's the most unpopular Prime Minister since records began, basically. I mean, that's quite a feat after just 14 and a bit months. We've also got, Andy Burnham wandering around conferences, the king over the water. Eventually just come down from Manchester to Liverpool. I mean, it's extraordinary that he's wandering around being thought of as the next leader and that's even being discussed. I mean, you and I remember, we were both working in the House of Commons together as lobby correspondents when Tony Blair had just got into power. The idea that in 1998, a few months into, to the summer of that, there would have been a conversation about Tony Blair facing a challenge to his leadership is laughable. So why is it happening to Keir Starmer?
For reasons, one of which is if you come into politics just trying to hold on to little majorities here and there, then, of course, in the end, you'll be blown off course by events. And the other thing I think is, we live in a different era than the one when you and I were working together. The era of social media and constant commentary makes it much, much harder to lead because you're always trying to square off different groups of people who might be offended or upset. And the reality is, if you look at somebody who's a very strong leader and takes direction, it's because because they don't really care about what's going to happen to them in the polls. And that's the dilemma we have in all Western representative democracy now.
Yeah, and it is niche. But then you think about someone like Margaret Thatcher, who just like, I don't care if this or that policy is unpopular. I'm going to say it because it's true. Or I'm going to do it because it's true. And Keir Starmer seems to be constantly worrying about that, apart from when he's talking about reform, when he constantly talks about racism. I mean, he had to sort of correct himself. I'm not saying, he doesn't say that Nigel Farage is racist. You'd think he'd be sued to his backside. He might lose his donkey field to that. But he doesn't say that reform voters are racist. Although, if you carry your flag and you protest against things, you might be a bigot or racist. But he says that reform's policy, their migrant policy in particular, in relation to those who come here legally but aren't net contributors and aren't really integrating in society, and that they should have to reapply, and that they shouldn't get indefinite leave to remain, even if they've already been given it, and should be deported. He says that's a racist policy, and immoral even. But today, Shabana Mahmood, his own Home Secretary, is announcing a policy which, other than the backdating, seems to me to be pretty much the same policy. What do you make of that?
Of course, this is all about trying to speak to different audiences, and that's how you end up with confusion. And of course, not only that, Rachel Reeves has already sort of stood behind Keir Starmer's comments using the racist language herself. She said this morning that she feels the same way. Yeah. And of course, there are a lot of people in the Labour Party, and don't forget they're at the Labour conference right now, so all their delegates are around them. That's what they feel too, and they applaud that kind of language, and they absolutely agree with it. So do the trade unions, and so do the Labour members.
But that's fine getting applause from that lot, but that lot are going to vote for you anyway. And on the current polling, an awful lot of people who've gone over to reform, he's not going to win them back by basically saying you support a racist policy, because if you support a racist policy, you know what that makes you? Wink, wink, a racist.
Well, here's the thing, Julia. It's not exactly as you put it, because the reality is the people in the hall, the people in the constituency parties, the trade unions, may not vote for Keir Starmer in a leadership election, should it come up, or any of the other people. And that's what they're actually worried about right now, is staying in power as this crisis begins to engulf them. And that's why they're making these comments. In a sense, they're not really trying to worry about outside the Liverpool conference. They're much more worried about their own survival, as you say. Yeah. They have Andy Burnham, they have others circling around because they feel that the Prime Minister may be wounded. So the Prime Minister has to look a bit at his own audience, as a media audience right now. Because when all this is happening, you think to yourself, who is running the country and what are they focusing on?
Yeah, and I think we can safely say they don't have a clue. In that sense, we saw on Friday this sort of desperate sort of, we can't, we can't deal with illegal migration. Bearing in mind we had even just one single boat on the weekend that had a record 125 migrants. This mega dinghy, that is going to be a big worry. 1,000 arriving over the weekend. We talked about legal migration and how we deal with, people who stay who aren't contributing. But in illegal migration, he just plucked out of thin air the idea that we should have digital ID, we should all have apps on our phone, and that somehow would stop the pull of illegal work for illegal migrants. I mean, asked repeatedly by Laura Kunsberg yesterday, he couldn't explain why that would actually make a difference. But do you detect Tony Blair's hands in this? Because this was something that he, when he was Prime Minister, constantly talked about.
It was, and it's been an idea that's been around for a long time, kicked around and rejected. That's for very good reasons. What I do think, though, is that, you've got to be fair to the Prime Minister. If you're asking him to take decisions and be bold, then at least let him have his decision and let's argue it out, let's debate it out. Because I'd rather have somebody try to do something concrete than somebody just sort of pussyfooting around the corners.
But he's not being bold by sort of saying we'll deal with illegal migration by making all legal British citizens be able to be tracked by their government in real time. I'm not sure what I genuinely can't even work out why even he thinks that would work.
Well, you're absolutely right. The details of the policy don't seem to stack up in any logical way, and lots of people would agree with that. I think what I'm trying to say, though, is at least he is trying something radical or talking about something radical. I'd rather have the debate than pretend there's no problem. There is definitely a problem. And, you know, you look at the other announcements that Rachel Reeves and others are making this week, it sounds good on paper to deny people benefits if they have been out of work for 18 months, to make sure that they actually have to be contributing and all the rest of it. That sounds great. But for that to happen, if they're going to take paid work, you need businesses to step up and offer that paid work. And of course, businesses are right now being squeezed by the extra taxes and costs of doing business. And they're not in a fit state to come forward and offer this kind of opportunity.
And they don't want to take on, we had a caller earlier, they don't want to take on some sort of feckless youth who's got no work ethic and doesn't want to be there and isn't going to try. And they're worried that these new employment rights that Angela Rayner was busy with before she got, had to resign, that actually they wouldn't be able to get rid of this person. They'd be stuck with them.
And that is exactly the one of the problems that the government is going to face. So a whole bunch of policy ideas being floated this week. All of them sound brilliant if they came to fruition, apart from your ID cards one. But the question is, does this government have the authority and the ability to turn those policies into activity and action on the ground? And it's very, very debatable whether they do.
And it is extraordinary that they have got a working majority was 161 and is only not even 15 months into being in power and has completely lost all authority. It's quite extraordinary. How damaging do you think all the the free gear care stuff, the free glasses from Lord Ali and the free suits and his wife's frocks and the football tickets and all of that, and the damaging stuff about Angela Rayner and her hypocrisy over the stamp duty that she was due to pay and didn't pay, and then we've got Keir Starmer and this allegations about this donkey field sheltering £320,000 in a field basically he bought for 20k about 20 years ago, because we all have a spare 20k to buy a donkey field for his disabled, very elderly mother. Loving gift from his son who was earning good money, and then it all appears to be wrapped up in a trust, or was it? Dodging questions from the Sunday Times for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, and then having to tackle it on the BBC in an interview yesterday. How damaging do you think any of that is, given that no one's accusing him of breaking the law, but they are saying he's out of touch and he's a hypocrite because he would definitely criticise someone else for doing what he himself has done?
I know you'd like me to say, I think it's damaging in the moment. I think long term, people have very short memories and there's so many things going on in the world that people won't remember the detail. But what is a problem is if you are trying to run a government in this super complex, fast moving world where there are huge risks and huge challenges, then it's a huge distraction to you as an individual and to the team around you, because you're trying to firefight the whole time. And it's very, very hard to do that and keep an eye on the big prize and the big picture. And that's the thing that your viewers and listeners care about, is who is actually running this country with the debt that we've got and the challenges that we face around the world at this time. And I'd much rather they were not having to deal with that kind of stuff. But short term, sure, it's a problem. Long term, I think people forget.
Yeah. Although lots of it's quite complicated, but we know that the free gear care, that definitely stuck with a lot of people. And something about a donkey. I mean, no one, why is he buying a donkey field? A lot of people might say. Just finally, I must ask you. Now, you were a political editor. You counted them in, you counted them out. You dealt with a lot of better prime ministers than certainly Keir Starmer is turning out to be. I know you also now advise big clients on terms of a lot of their. Not just lobbying, but their PR and things as well. If you were going to give a bit of free advice to this government, to Keir Starmer in particular, what would you tell him to do?
Most important thing is to take a very, very clear opinion about what it is you want to achieve as the Prime Minister. Put in place the policies and the mechanics to make sure that happens, and go out and communicate about that, and not be sidetracked by all the rest of the stuff. Big idea, big picture, give some vision and go after it.
Yeah, he'd need to have the big idea. He'd need to have the competence to be able to make it happen then. And I don't think he has either of those, though. That's the problem.
Well, one of the challenges, if you get into power by sort of constantly juggling plates, balls and spinning plates, is you don't really have a very strong team around you. You mentioned Tony Blair earlier on, and Tony Blair had a phenomenal team around him. Now, Keir Starmer is latterly, in the last few weeks, beginning to take steps to put good people around him. That's what the changes mean. And hopefully for him and for the country, those people will begin to sort things out. But it's a challenge, there's no question about it. And you need a Prime Minister who really believes in a big idea, and that's the question.
I think that's the key, isn't it? George Pascoe Watson, great to talk to you, former political editor of The Sun. Thank you very much indeed. That's a bit of free advice for you there, Mr Prime Minister. You'd pay a lot of money for that, by the way. Seems really obvious, though, doesn't it, Sam Armstrong? But this is the fundamental thing. Keir Starmer doesn't have a big idea. I get the very strong impression he doesn't really believe in anything or know what he wants to do. He just wanted to have a CV, but he wanted to be Prime Minister. He wanted to be, he wanted to be barrister, director of public prosecutions, and then he wanted to be Prime Minister. And lots of people told him he'd be a great Labour leader and a great Prime Minister. He believed the publicity. It turns out he's really not very good at it. But I don't mind having someone who doesn't have a vision, as long as they're just really good at competence and managing what they do. But he doesn't appear to be good at either.
Well, the trouble about running an organisation, any big organisation, without a mission, without a purpose, and this government is an organisation without a mission or a purpose, is they begin to tear each other apart. Because, you know, you look at, for example, the Church of England or something, an organisation that's lost its way, lost its mission, doesn't know what it's about anymore. They spend their entire time attacking one another, having big rows, because that's what happens if you're sort of drifting in the wind.
You're not all on the same page. This is what we're going to do. We're going to get the country back to work, sort out the economy.
The original sin of the Starmer project was they never knew why they were doing it.
They just weren't Jeremy Corbyn.
They weren't Jeremy Corbyn, and they wanted to win. They were in favour of them winning and the other guys losing.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, there's a lot to be said for winning, but again, what's the point of winning? Where are you on the donkey field? Do you know, how big a story is it or not?
I couldn't give a monkey's.
Couldn't give a donkey.
Couldn't give a donkey. My problem with Keir Starmer is that he is tinkering around while the Titanic of this country is perilously sinking because of migration, because of slow growth, because of danger on the world scene, and he is doing absolutely nothing. Look, with this donkey field, he spent a load of money buying his mother a field for a donkey 20 years ago. Good for him. He got the field back when she died. Fine, good for him. To be honest, I can't work out why he would have had to pay tax on that anyway. It was a field, he bought it, all the rest of it. The problem
it's very complicated.
The problem with this man is he's seriously unfit to be Prime Minister, and I want to keep focused on that. I want to keep focused on getting him out of office, because, as I say, the real story today is that it looks increasingly likely that he's going to break his promise to the public on the economy.
And I completely accept that. And Rachel Reeves is saying, you know, various things about, like, she wants to put laws in place to put economic security first. I mean, how do you do? I mean, who knows?
Don't you, Julia? Don't you? I want to put laws in place to secure economic stability.
Wouldn't that be great? No, but going back to the donkey field, genuinely.
Yes.
There's a whole thing. So he bought it for 20 grand back in 1996, and he says he gave it to his parents, and it was his mother, who was disabled and elderly, so she was very ill, and she wanted to be able to see donkeys in the field. That's lovely. 3 years ago, he sold the field and a small plot of adjacent land that belonged to his father for 320 grand. And basically that he paid 52 grand in capital gains tax on it. But there's a whole thing where he told the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards he bought that land originally for his parents, and he immediately gifted the land into them, but he didn't transfer the legal title. Now that means that the Sunday Times said that means he must have set up a trust to own the land. He has denied that he set up a trust to own the land, but for weeks and weeks and weeks he has failed to answer the questions which were asked by the Sunday Times perfectly legitimately about this. There was nothing to see. He could have explained what it was, couldn't he? Could he not? But he didn't, and now he's gone on telly. But do you think anyone cares? Or does this tie into the whole, you know, do as I say, not as I actually do? And you've got people like, you know, Angela Rayner, same thing. Angela Rayner was Deputy Prime Minister, and there she was, not paying the full stamp duty on a property, putting money in trust for her son after a horrific NHS negligence, and that's her personal business. But, you know, that all emerged. But nevertheless, whether deliberate or not, avoiding paying the full tax on what was due.
The reality is the public have basically made up their mind on Starmer.
Yeah, they have, haven't they? So it doesn't make any difference.
It doesn't make much difference. They think he's a bit preachy, a bit weak. He's all right. He's broadly competent, but he doesn't believe in anything. He's just kind of there. He's cotton wool in the wind.
He's just sort of blancmange in Brill cream, isn't he?
Yeah, and this story is not going to change people's minds. The one thing Starmer could do to change their minds is do something about the boats. Do something about the state of British high streets. Do any of these things. He won't do it because he's
He's not
in hoc to a mad bunch of Labour backbenchers.
This stuff is perfectly doable, but what you need a government, and and again, a lot of us got our hopes in reform on this. I know you're a Tory, but whatever happens after the next election, literally, you've got to have a very clear plan. You've got to have laid it out, so you have that. This is what we're going to do. Some taxes are going to go up, some taxes are going to go down, whatever. But you need to make it really, really clear, so you've got that mandate, and so that's the deal, guys. It's going to be a very tough job, but it's not beyond us. And this country is a brilliant country, and it's not brilliant at the moment, and it can be great again. But we're going to have to do the work. But it's going to mean everyone on board, including all those feckless 18, 19, 20-year-olds who don't work. Anyway, 12:26 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about. Get in touch, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The simple truth is that Keir Starmer is desperately trying to regain some credibility when it comes to patriotism. And frankly, I don't think anybody is buying it. This is a party that mocks the St George's flag that people are flying from their cars and homes. Keir Starmer himself described all immigration legislation as racist, so he chucks that word around rather too loosely. The fact is, reform policies are nonsense and undeliverable, but he is trying to make himself sound tough, and frankly, I don't think anyone's buying it.
Well, across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:29 is the time. Coming up, we're going to be talking about what is going on with the future of Gaza. We'll talk to Elon Levy, a former Israeli government spokesman, and we're going to be talking to Rupert Bell, our royal correspondent, about the latest on the Duke and Duchess of York. Will they or will they not be welcome at Christmas at Sandringham? The answer, I think, is a clear no. And who are these men in grey suits that Harry's whinging about this week? First up, though, let's have a little listen to Rachel. I mean, I'm sorry to do this to you, but, it has to be done sometimes. Very short clip, I promise you. Rachel Reeves speaking at a Labour Party conference in Liverpool, being heckled by, of course, a pro-Palestine protester. Here's what happened.
New legislation to put our economic security first. We understand your cause and we are recognising a Palestinian state, but we are now a party in government, not a party of protest. And I'm proud to stand here as your Chancellor, the Chancellor that's increased the minimum wage, a Chancellor that is introducing free breakfast clubs and free school meals, a chancellor that's overseen 5 cuts to interest rates. That's the difference we make, and that is the difference we make in power, not through protest. Our party has changed, and that is why I am standing here, proud to be your Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Oh, it stopped. Make it just no. Again, why are you standing up and heckling the Chancellor? That they've just recognised the Palestinian state while there are 20 people still being held, tortured and enslaved in Hamas's tunnels under Gaza, and then shouting on about mass starvation and genocide for the last years. I mean, for a start, you don't know with words what mass starvation or genocide actually mean. You're an idiot. Come and protest in here and I'll put you right. But someone's trying. I mean, they were lapping it up, though, weren't they? They were lapping it up. We're not a party of protest, we're a party of government.
Labour figures are saying on Twitter that was the best moment of her speech. Well, if that was the best of it, I don't want to watch the rest of it, if I'm honest.
This is why we don't do this stuff live.
Can you imagine? Nobody would be listening to us still. It would be
I mean, genuinely, it would just be like, you may as well just have dead air. Absolutely. No, let's go to your calls, because let's keep sane people on the air. Michael is on the line in Birmingham, wants to have his say on what Keir Starmer had to say. I mean, no doubt issued and supported by all of his comrades in the cabinet about reforms migrant policy being racist. Good afternoon to you, Michael.
Hi there.
Hello. What do you want to say,
hear me okay? Look, I disagree with your guest in a friendly way. No, keep Starmer there. It's like, if you support a football team and the rivals have got a bad manager, you want to keep that manager there.
Absolutely.
Just let him shoot himself in the foot. Let himself score own goal after own goal. And his latest own goal is going back to the donkey field, right? I mean, look, I tell you what, all of this lot, Rayner and him and various other people, for so-called socialists, they ain't bad capitalists, are they? They know how to do a good deal when it lines their pockets.
But it doesn't matter. I don't mind if it's legal. I mean, again, you buy a packet of duty-free fags or some perfume at duty-free, you're avoiding tax, but it's legal.
Well, my view on it, Julia, is this: I mean, I used to be a Labour Party member and a Labour Party voter and all that sort of thing. And I remember when the people that ran it were kind of like postal workers, dockers, and goodness knows what. These champagne socialists, that there is a higher principle you have to be on its Labour. Look, I'm not against anybody having wealth, but be a Tory. Labour. No,
I don't think Labour has ever been about people being poor. It's about equal. The theory was it was like equal opportunity to make a good life for yourself.
But they're living the Tory lifestyle they supposedly hate, and also he can't read the room. 20 grand a year is nothing. I did some research. 34% of people in this country have less than £1,000 in savings. Yeah. And he's talking about 20 grand 30 years ago.
30 years, well, no, 20 years ago. Yeah, but his thing is, I was earning, I was earning a lot of money then. I mean, and he wasn't, and he still is. All fair points, Michael. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate that. Talking of, North London lawyers, David is in North London, wants to have his say on digital ID. Good afternoon to you, David.
Hello, Julia. Lovely to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you.
First thing I would just say is I think Rachel Reeves and the rest of them, my cringe glands explode, and they all just need to. They all just sound like they need to blow their nose. But anyway, I just think with Keir Starmer and digital IDs and just the whole package, I would also remind people that he defined a working person as someone who couldn't just write a cheque when they're in trouble, but he can write a £20,000 cheque like nothing. So he's clearly not a working person. But anyway, on the digital ID thing, the flaws with it really are really funny, because if I turn up as a migrant from another country and I get told, no, you don't have a digital ID, you can't access stuff, and I say, okay, and then I go to the NHS, which is supposedly free at the point of use, they won't turn me away, so I'll still get access to the NHS, so the digital ID doesn't really do anything there. Second, to sign up to the digital ID, you'd have to prove your identity, which means they'll ask me for a piece of ID. But then they'll tell me after that ID is not good enough, which means that the digital ID is flawed in principle anyway. And then the other really interesting point is I think this is in my opinion at least, the worrying bit, is the UK and the US, which have traditionally been free countries. We've always said that everything is free. Like you have the freedom to do anything, and we're free countries. But there are laws, so you can't murder, you can't steal, and all the other bits and pieces. But essentially everything is legal unless we tell you it's not. The difference is what they're doing here is they're turning freedoms into privileges, and essentially they're essentially saying, well, like the EU, when people are talking about the ECHR and us leaving that and how it will remove our freedoms, it doesn't. It just removes legislation that they're legislating that we're allowed to be free. But we're allowed to be free anyway.
Absolutely.
They're supposed to legislate to give us the boundaries to obviously, stay within all the various, laws around all sorts of things.
Yeah. But also, crucially, it's the idea that our freedoms were given to us by the state. No, they weren't. We took them. They're ours already. We allow the state to govern us through our, through our votes. And, it's got it completely, the wrong way around in terms of the relationship between the individual and the state. That's because they think they know better than us, David. Fantastic call. Both calls great. All the calls today, as always, fantastic. Thank you so much. Going to take a quick break right now. Then we're going to be talking about what is going to be going on in the White House today when Benjamin Netanyahu meets with Donald Trump to talk about this Gaza peace plan. And are we seeing big concessions from Netanyahu? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:38 is the time. Just a couple of moments. We're going to be talking to our guest, Elon Levy, former Israeli government spokesman, about what is going on in terms of Gaza. Now, we just had that heckle. We just played that just horrific clip. Rachel Reeves, for standing up to a heckler. We're a party of government, not protest. After a protester pointlessly and completely erroneously shouted out that Israel was committing genocide and mass starvation in Gaza. But we've got a very interesting development today. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is meeting with Donald Trump in the White House. This after the American administration has put together a 21-point peace plan for Gaza. And we've got what appears to be quite a big change of mind from Netanyahu. He said he would grant amnesty for Hamas, I mean, what's left of them, frankly, if it releases the remaining hostages and Hamas is willing to leave Gaza. He's always talked about crushing Hamas previously. Is this significant, Sam Armstrong?
Well, the bit that jumps out at me was that, look, Hamas clearly need punishing, and one element of punishment that's coming as part of this deal is it was reported that to rule this new administration that's going to be running Gaza to transition is one Tony Blair. Yeah. I thought, do you know what? Actually, the punishment might actually fit the crime. You might be trying it again if you got Tony Blair running you.
Look at what you could have won. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we make light of it, but there is all this talk about, what happens. So we've got the Brits and the French and others saying, okay, you can have a Palestinian state. We'll recognise a Palestinian state that doesn't actually exist at the current time. It doesn't fit any of the criteria required for a state to actually exist. But the idea was that, someone's going to have to run it if it's not Hamas. But if they have democratic elections, which is what presumably all these people say they should have, I hate to tell you, it's Hamas that will win, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank too.
Yeah, I'm afraid democracy and the Middle East at times make a bit of a mucky combination. The truth is, far too many people in Palestine have totally unacceptable views about Israel.
Full stop.
They don't believe it should exist, for
yes,
starters.
Exactly. And Jews, and us in the West. I hate to tell you, everybody, we're next on the list. Well, let's talk about this with Elon Levy, who joins us now, former Israeli government spokesman, also now host of Israel, the State of a Nation podcast. A very good afternoon to you, Elon.
Hello, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. So how significant is this meeting between Netanyahu and Trump today and this 21-point peace plan? And how significant is this idea that he would grant an amnesty for Hamas?
This is crunch time. Israel wants to end the war, the longest war in Israel's history, and it wants to end the war by bringing all the hostages home and removing Hamas from power so it can never start another war ever again. And so really this is a make or break moment where Hamas will be put under pressure to lay down its arms to free those hostages all in one go and finally put this war behind us. President Trump is presenting a 21-point plan. And that plan basically says either Hamas will dismantle itself or Israel will continue going through the Gaza Strip, dismantling Hamas, taking it apart, and handing it over to some transnational authority that will run the Gaza Strip. Some people talking about Tony Blair.
Yeah. Exactly, we were just saying. But there's been this talk, well, OK, anyone can run it. You just can't be Hamas or Fatah or the Iranians. It can't be anyone who poses a threat. Does anyone really want it? I mean, that's the reality, is there's a reason why Egypt hasn't opened its very large border with Gaza. They don't want the Palestinian people. The Jordanians don't want any more. The Saudis don't want any more. No one actually wants these people because they've been so radicalised over the last goodness knows how many years of having Hamas in charge of them. So does anyone really want that job?
Well, and that's the horrible truth. No one really wants to govern the Gaza Strip, at least not in a way that commits it to a future of peace next to its
Well, Israel didn't want to. Israel walked away 20 years
well,
ago.
Exactly. Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip 20 years ago and got back rockets on Tel Aviv and the death squads of October 7th who burned families alive in their homes and took hostages into Gaza. And now that we're seeing a lot of pressure on Israel to withdraw from the West Bank as well, Israelis are saying, hang on, how can you guarantee that the same thing that happened in Gaza won't happen in the West Bank on a much larger scale? And the real challenge, therefore, after this war, if it ends soon, is going to be how do you transform Gaza from being one big launch pad for attacks against Israel into a peaceful entity that is at peace with its neighbour Israel and isn't committed to more jihad against it.
And that's the thing, it's all very well, and we've had a heckle at Labour Party conference with a pro-Palestinian activist saying, oh, Israel committing genocide, mass starvation in Gaza for 2 years. Again, both complete lies. Provably complete lies, but not that stops the government from recognising a Palestinian state on the basis of those lies. But there's been no conditions at all on Hamas in terms of what they had to do, in terms of releasing the hostages. I mean, we're talking bare-sodding minimum at this point, let alone laying down their arms. But realistically, can Netanyahu actually succeed in his aim? And we've given that there's quite a lot of criticism even from leaders of the IDF and many even in his own government, succeed in his aim of completely destroying Hamas. He's taken out pretty much all the leadership in Gaza. He's taken out the leadership in Qatar. He's taken out the people who've been funding it in lots of ways and their ability to arm them in Iran. He's taken out, Hezbollah's, a lot of their rockets and their leadership. Realistically, has he kind of achieved all he can achieve other than getting the hostages out?
And now is crunch time for the world to tell Hamas it's game over. You have to lay down your arms, free the hostages, and end this war. The tragedy is that international pressure on Israel to end the war is giving Hamas every incentive to continue the war.
Yeah.
I mean, Hamas's leaders are calling the recognition of a non-existent Palestinian state a fruit of October 7th. They're doubling down. Razi Ahmed told CNN this weekend that the condemnation of Israel is one of the benefits of October 7th. Yeah. Hamas feels that it's vindicated. And that's why now what we need to see is pressure on Hamas's state sponsors. Chief among them, Qatar.
Yeah.
Julia, Qatar is the biggest landowner in London. It owns more land than the Crown. It owns the Shard. It has a massive share in Sainsbury's and in Heathrow Airport as well, and Claridge's. We need pressure on them, on the Islamist dictatorship, backing Hamas to tell it the whole world is saying you have to let go. This war has to end.
It is absolutely extraordinary that, you know, we've got America and the world was happy to go into Afghanistan for sheltering of the Al-Qaeda network and Osama bin Laden when they launched the 9/11 attack on New York and the Pentagon. But we're happy to just, like, you know, play nicey with the Qataris as they've been harbouring the leaders of Hamas who launched that attack on our only democratic ally in the Middle East of Israel. And again, you and I have discussed this many times. It is extraordinary that these, you know, whether it's Keir Starmer or Macron or anyone else, all these people who are telling the Israelis they need to live side by side with people who have vowed to completely and utterly annihilate them, and who has celebrated the not just a terror attack, but the most vile, foul invasion and I mean, rape, murder, mutilation, the most horrific events on October the 7th, which some people are still denying, despite all of the evidence that it happened. And someone who's been to those sites, my God, it's very clear it happened. But the West is still requiring that Israel does something which no other government in the world would ever agree to do.
Yeah, Julia, I think the British and French government's behaviour has been shameful because they've essentially been pressuring Israel to end this war with the jihadi regime that started this war still in power, just a few hundred meters away from people's homes. Let's be clear what happens if this war ends with hostages still in Gaza and Hamas still in power. If this is not the last Gaza war, there will be a next Gaza war because Hamas will never stop until it succeeds in its goal of destroying Israel. You know, Julia, you visited the site of the massacre and people make a mistake when they look at October 7th and think that it was just a terror attack.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was the opening shot of what was meant to be a regional war of annihilation against Israel with all of Iran's proxies. Hezbollah from Lebanon, the Houthis from Yemen, the Iranian regime itself. And Hamas mistimed it, it failed. But that is what Hamas was planning on October 7th.
Let's not ignore that reality. What did you make, just finally, of the speech that your Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave at the UN? And we had this very sort of, you know, staged walkout. Loads of people went into that UN Assembly Hall who wouldn't normally be there, so they could very openly leave. And, oh, look, you know, he's the genocidal leader of Israel and we're all walking out because we're so moral. What did you make of that, given that they don't seem to feel that way about pretty much any of the genuinely genocidal dictators who they happily sit and listen to and applaud?
Yeah, let's remember, most countries in the United Nations are not democracies. Most of them are autocracies, dictatorships of one form or another. And I think we all make a mistake when we attach any moral authority to the United Nations. I saw that, you know, many diplomats from mostly Islamic nations walked out of Netanyahu's speech. It didn't impress me. It's something they do every single year. And they did it where the United Nations, which was meant to be a place where we actually sit and listen to alternative points of view and to other world leaders and try to solve things through dialogue. And so walking out in this sort of petulant hissy fit is not only rude, it just undermines the values of the United Nations that they claim to support. Frankly, it's pathetic.
I couldn't agree with you more. Ilon Levy, great to talk to you, former Israeli government spokesman, host of Israel State of a Nation podcast. 12:48 is the time. Going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be talking about, like, well, if you think the United Nations is difficult, imagine being in the royal family. Will the Duke and Duchess of York be allowed to go to family Christmas at Sandringham this year? Seems not. And who are these grey men in suits, or men in grey suits, that Prince Harry claims are stopping him reuniting with his father? We'll talk about that with Rupert Bell. This is Talk.
Minister wasn't saying...
We've got a regional county FA, not a national FA, coming out with this document. I look at some of these words and I think, someone needs to get a life. I then, on the other side, think, well, are they actually creating a duty of care as a county FA and bouncing the ball over the tennis court to make certain that they don't get charged with any problems in the future? I think we're creating a world of fear here.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:52 is the time. Sam Armstrong is still with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam, I just want to clarify, is it ever very complicated at Christmas to decide who comes in the family to Christmas or not to Christmas?
Well, I know I'm the last to know. That's the thing. I definitely get that feeling that
you're just told where to turn up on the day.
People tell me where to turn up, and if I don't, sometimes I think they wouldn't even mind.
Oh, that's so harsh. Well, I wonder with the royals, it seems to be very, very, very complicated. But it does appear that the king is taking advantage of the opportunity to get his younger brother, he clearly doesn't like, Prince Andrew, out of the way when it comes to Christmas at Sandringham. He and his wife apparently not going to be welcomed anymore, all to do with the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Let's talk about this with Rupert Bell, Talk's royal correspondent. Afternoon to you, Rupert.
Well, morning from New York again. It's the morning after the night before.
Well, I want to talk to you about the Ryder Cup. We'll come to that. Let's get through this royal nonsense quickly and get to the Ryder Cup. No, but is this the king saying, look, it's just not right for Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, given this long contract with Jeffrey Epstein, to be seen in the royal family, with the royal family walking to church on Christmas Day and all that stuff? Or is this, frankly, King Charles thinking, brilliant, I finally got an excuse to get this man out of my life?
I don't think they want them photographed with members of the royal family. We saw what happened at the Duchess of Kent's funeral. Prince Andrew taking centre stage, sidling up to Prince William. So I think that's the problem, because any time he makes an appearance, then he becomes the story. And Christmas shouldn't be, given the backstory, it's not a good look for the royal family. So I think what they don't mind them best are they coming to Sandringham, but for goodness sake, get into the church, keep out of the way.
But this is the thing, Prince Andrew doesn't get it. He obviously doesn't think he's ever done anything wrong, but that's, of course, a man who thinks that it's absolutely fine to be friends with someone after they've been convicted of trafficking young girls, underage girls, for prostitution. He probably doesn't think that. He probably doesn't have, should we say, a moral compass like the rest of people. So he and Sarah Ferguson clearly don't think they've done anything wrong. They don't see why they shouldn't be. Hello, I'm with William and Kate. I'm with the Queen. I mean, they don't get it.
They just don't get it. And obviously Sarah, the Duchess of York, has had headlines again, and she's lost so many charities that she was patron of. Her life has unravelled. So I think for Prince Andrew, he's now got to see himself as a prisoner in this 30-room royal lodge.
Let me just get my tiny little violin out. Well, Prince Harry, we don't expect to be turning up for Christmas. I think every family has got one of those couples where we don't want her to turn up. But he reckons, we are told, and again, all these stories that somehow keep making it into the papers, that he's blaming the men in grey suits for sabotaging a reunion with his father. We know when he last was back, he actually had a meeting with his father. We hadn't seen him for a very long time since he was diagnosed with cancer treatment, needing cancer treatment. But he's making similar sort of criticisms that his late mother Diana made of the sort of men in grey suits and how they sabotage her relationship with other royals.
Well, the problem is this meeting with his father, they didn't want, that is the royal family, any details to come out, because people behind the scenes are saying, right, let's try and engineer a more normal relationship between father and son. When this meeting happened, what they didn't want, and almost probably it was a test, don't go bleating to the press.
And what did he do?
What did he do, or what did his team do? Someone has leaked details, to the exasperation of the royal household. They know that they wanted to try and make it not half in, half out, as probably Harry still covets that sort of dual role, which the king has said, no, that's not happening.
I want to make money, do what I want, but I still want to be treated like a HRH royal.
And that's not what the king wants. Yes, they want the family to come together, and why not? And work out whether they can come to Christmas Christmas or not, but Meghan doesn't want to come anywhere near this country.
Yep. And we don't really want to.
Well, the men in grey suits is also Harry sort of grabbing a headline and feel that he is part of some major subplot. That is not the case.
Well, he's always the victim. He's always the victim, isn't he? Right, let's get on to the stuff I know you really want to talk about. Those watching will see a little bit bleary-eyed, did you say, the morning after the night before, because you are in New York and you've been covering the Ryder Cup for talkSPORT as well. I have to say, golf is a new interest of mine, having started golf lessons in May. Absolutely loving it. Never been more than adequate, but actually very much for the first time, I'm always forced to watch this stuff, my sport-mad husband, watching the Ryder Cup. But I have to say, it was unbelievably exciting. I mean, I'm annoyed at myself for saying that.
It was a major squeaky bum time was had by all Europeans.
Technical term.
A technical term. I hope you're happy with that, but it basically sums up. I thought when I turned up, like everybody else, this could be over pretty quickly.
Well, bearing in mind, the first 2 days, basically, Europe was complete. Team Europe was in the lead, massively.
And given the circumstances, it was a Herculean effort. But finally, the American golfers turned up, and we had an epic day's sport. It was unbelievable. Thankfully, Shane Lowry found a way to hold that putt to retain it, and then a couple of others got half. The fact that only one bloke won a match.
Yeah,
from
but
Europe,
it was like we had to win two. We had to win two points, and there were 11, and we didn't do it until very, very late in the day. Thank God we all went to bed happy. You, I think, rather later than some of us. But there was also this issue over the abuse of Rory McIlroy and indeed the teams generally. Some of the abuse absolutely outrageous, but I do find it. He gave some good, F-off comebacks. Frankly, I find it extraordinary that the American team didn't go public and say, this has to stop, not in our name. I think that's really out of order.
I'm afraid it showed the worst facets of American society. Now, you can blame whatever you like. Obviously, we had the president here on Friday, but bearing in mind it was $750 a ticket. So you would thought, that's punchy for a day's entertainment. So basically, it was a lot of people with a lot of money, but their behaviour and the comments.
Absolutely.
It was unedifying in the extreme.
It was absolutely shocking. Some of the stuff and attacking his wife and it was just awful. Rupert Bell, you go and nurse that hangover a bit longer. talk's royal correspondent Sam Armstrong, not a golfer.
No, I guess you're worried about the digital ID because they might mark your golf scores against it.
Do you want to see my golf scores? I'm very much in the learning mode. Ian Collins, though, you've just joined us for the studio. Tell us what's happening on your show. You were nodding away. Were you watching it yesterday?
I do not follow outdoor